president said that American leadership is, quote, what holds the world together, and he warned that if the U.S. doesn't act here, he says conflict and chaos could, quote, spread to other parts of the world. That's why he says tomorrow he is sending an urgent budget request to Congress for both aid to Israel and Ukraine and for other national security needs, as he repeated one of the message that he delivered here while on the ground in Israel just 24 hours ago.
When I was in Israel yesterday, I said that when America experienced the hell of 9/11, we felt enraged as well. While we sought and got justice, we made mistakes. So I cautioned the government of Israel not to be blinded by rage. And here in America, let us not forget who we are. We reject all forms of hate, whether against Muslims, Jews, or anyone. That's what great nations do. And we are a great nation.
Now, as a former White House reporter who covered President Biden watching this speech, I think one thing that's important to point out is how rare you see the president in this setting, speaking from the resolute desk in the Oval Office, straight to camera and straight to the American people. He's only done it 2 times since he has ever taken office. And tonight he was talking about 2 very different wars, what's happening in Ukraine and what is happening here in Israel, 2 very different entities, but he drew a through line from Hamas, the militant group, of course, in Gaza, and President Putin in Russia. In this speech, the president sought to really try to lay out the stakes for the United States. He said he understands why people are asking questions. Why is U.S. aid and U.S. money going to Ukraine? Why is it going to Israel? He talked about why it's important and how it actually does matter to America's national security and the argument that he made. Of course, a lot of that speech was informed by the visit that the president had here just 24 hours ago when he was sitting in with the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, giving a speech after that, talking about why this is so important. With me now to analyze that speech and the big takeaways from it is Israeli journalist Nadav Eyal, is also the author of the book Revolt, and joins me now. Obviously, everyone in Israel has been paying very close attention to what President Biden has been saying, his visit yesterday, his first speech after the October 7th attack. How do you think what was just said will register with people tonight?
Well, for Israel, this is a commitment for its security. People need to understand that what Israelis lost because of this attack is their sense of security and confidence with their own defense forces, both because of this huge intelligence failure, but also because of what happened. We just saw mass murder and ethnic cleansing on our southern border with these communities. In a matter of 8 hours, more than 1,400 people murdered. And the fact that the president of the most important power in the world would come to Israel and not only say we're behind you in terms of security, but also have some stardust of empathy to the Israelis is so powerful and moving for Israelis, and that was really important to hear him.
Well, and I was reading something you wrote earlier today, and you said, of Biden's visit, that he came here for just a few hours, that the U.S. is sending 2 aircraft carriers here. You said not only to protect us from our enemies, but to protect us from ourselves, from the mistakes of our leaders and the security establishment, those who have all failed. So essentially you're saying his leadership means so much because of the reflection of the leadership or lack of here in Israel.
Yes, I think the Israeli leadership failed us both in terms of intelligence and leading our defense forces, which are so powerful and could have prevented this attack. And they will pay the price. This is a democracy. I'm a journalist, and we're going to make them pay the price for their failures. But we're at war right now. And the fact that President Biden came here was also to make sure that the Israeli government, out of this sense of failure, will not use its force in ways that are not going to be efficient enough. And he made that point in Israel, and I think he made that point in the speech from the White House tonight.
He was talking about this support for Israel. It's about $10 billion, we believe, part of it going to the Iron Dome, which we've seen intercepting rockets here overhead. There are some on the progressive left in the U.S. Congress who believe that U.S. aid to Israel should not be unwavering. They've called what's happening in Gaza a genocide. They've called for a ceasefire. What do you think when you hear that from those lawmakers?
Well, for me as an Israeli and as someone who admires the power of America and the world, it's just heartbreaking to hear these voices from the U.S. What we have seen in our southern border is for the first time what happens when the Israeli Defense Forces fail for 8 hours. For 8 hours. And I have just talked with the survival of these massacres. I traveled to their hotels in the southern of Israel to speak with them, to have their testimonies. And I, as a former international correspondent, I've never heard anything like that unless you're talking about Srebrenica, the genocide in Serbia during the Yugoslavian wars, or if you're talking about what Bashar al-Assad did to his people in Syria. This was an attempted genocide in Israel. And if people don't make the distinction between targeted murder and between a military campaign that was ordered to defend Israel, then we have no basis for discussion. And this moral argument is also a legal one, and the US is making it. The US from both sides of the aisle, Republicans and Democrats.
Nadav Eyal, thank you for coming on, for sharing just your experiences, but also your reporting as well.
Thank you, Caitlin.
Thank you. For more reaction to President Biden's speech tonight, we have CNN's Pentagon correspondent Oren Lieberman also here with me, along with Dan Senor, who is a foreign policy advisor in the George W. Bush administration and co-wrote the upcoming book, The Genius of Israel, a very timely read at this moment. Dan, I want to start with you because we just saw President Biden delivering this speech after he took this rare step that you never see a foreign leader doing, a U.S. president, sitting in on a cabinet meeting here in Tel Aviv, a wartime cabinet, of course. Both then and now, he was urging Israel, don't be blinded by your rage. I mean, what do you make of the influence that President Biden has over Israel's moves here?
Well, the U.S. government has tremendous influence right now because the United States is the only country in the world right now that Israel can really depend on. I think the president's speech was important. I think his visit to Israel was extremely important. I suspect that the military commanders of Hamas did not expect that within days of their invasion of Israel, the commander-in-chief of the most powerful military in the world would be visiting Israel, consoling victims, sitting in the war cabinet, as you said. So in tonight's speech, which he didn't do in the last couple of weeks, is he talked about Iran. He talked about holding Iran accountable, which I think was important, and Israeli leaders were looking for that. They haven't seen it in the last 10 days, tying this all to Iran. The only part that I found a little disconcerting, Caitlin, was this lecture, if you will, to Israelis not to be blinded by rage, which I just thought was a little tone deaf given what Israel has been subjected to in the last few days by a terrorist organization, a barbaric terrorist organization, that really Israel does not have any territorial dispute with. They pulled out of Gaza in 2005, and they've been just subjected to this terror for years. And this was like of Nazi-like proportions, as the president himself has said. I think Israel's been pretty disciplined. It's working with the international community. It's working with the United States on the timing of its invasion. So I don't think this is a country that's blinded by rage.
Well, Dan, just to follow up on that, how do you think the senior Israeli officials, the members of that wartime cabinet, would hear a comment like that from President Biden?
It sounded to me like he said certain things in this speech tonight that were meant as sort of code to a part of his political base in this country that is not very enthusiastic about the position he's taken in locking arms with the Israeli government during this moment. So he's got to make the case for a forward-leaning policy that is basically standing by Israel as it begins what I think is imminent, a ground invasion into Gaza. And again, part of his base doesn't like it, so he's saying some things that I think will appeal to them. And one of them was this lecture, if you will, about don't be blinded by rage. So I think probably the Israeli leaders are not crazy about it. They don't think it reflects reality, but they recognize, I guess, or they're calculating that he's balancing a number of equities here.
Well, and Oren, Dan mentioned Iran there. You saw Biden was warning about conflict, chaos, this spreading into the Middle East. And of course, as he was making those comments, I thought about your reporting of this U.S. Navy destroyer operating in the Middle East, intercepting multiple missiles near the coast of Yemen. Of course, questioning where those missiles, what they were targeting. There are already concerns about this escalating. I wonder how much you think this amplifies those already existing concerns.
Oh, very much so. Look, for 20 months of war, and we'll use the analogy that President Joe Biden made between the war in Ukraine and the war in Israel. For 20 months, the war in Ukraine has not spilled out of Ukraine's borders, with tiny exceptions here and there, a missile that went over the border into Poland, for example. But we're not even 20 days into the war between Israel and Hamas in Gaza, and we're already seeing the regional amplification of that. And protests at most of the U.S. embassies across the region. We saw the U.S.'s Carney, a destroyer in the Red Sea, intercept 3 cruise missiles and a number of drones that were launched from Yemen, according to the Pentagon, by Houthi forces and potentially targeting Israel. So you're seeing that spillover, and for the U.S., and certainly for Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, the linking chain here is Iran. The Houthis are backed by Iran. A number of Iranian proxies in Syria and Iraq have attacked U.S. forces in the past. We've seen similar attacks over the course of the past 48 hours, though the Pentagon hasn't yet attributed that. So you see the concern not only of Iran's proxies here, but the possibility of this spreading, and perhaps spreading quickly here.
Well, and Dan, obviously what everyone is kind of bracing for and waiting for is what this ground invasion that everyone's expecting, which the defense minister here in Israel is previewing essentially, what that's going to look like. And one thing that goes hand in hand with that conversation are the hostages. And something you said recently really stood out to me, which is that you don't think that all of the hostages are under Hamas's control. And a Hamas leader seemed to confirm that tonight in this interview with the New York Times. I mean, how much does that complicate what negotiating for their release looks like? I mean, what this ground incursion could look like as well?
Look, Qatar is trying to negotiate with Hamas to get apparently some of the hostages out as an intermediary, if you will, between the United States government and Hamas. The problem is Palestinian Islamic Jihad apparently has a number of the hostages, so we're told. And who knows what other ragtag kind of sub-militias have some of the hostages. So even if Hamas wanted to negotiate, and it's not clear to me that they do, but even if they did want to negotiate, it's not clear to me that they actually have control of all these hostages. So I think it makes the whole process tragically futile. If Hamas were serious, or any of the other parties in Gaza that have hostages were serious about negotiating, I think they'd be doing things right now that they haven't been doing. They'd be allowing Red Cross or Red Crescent access. They'd be to the hostages to make sure that they're safe. They'd be allowing medical supplies to get in. They're doing none of that, which tells me their intention was never really to negotiate, but to use the hostages as human shields of sorts, and to really, almost like a deterrent against Israel, slow things down, slow the process down, make Israel think twice about coming into Gaza. I think Israel's going into Gaza. I think they're going in soon. And tragically, Caitlin, I don't think this hostage crisis is going to get resolved before then.
Yeah, so many families waiting on news about those people. Dan Senor, Oren Lieberman, thank you both for that analysis and that reporting.
Thanks.
Tonight, you saw President Biden talking about what this means, what could happen next. He also was referencing how he has struck a deal to try to get aid finally into Gaza, as Dan was referencing there. It was supposed to start flowing from Egypt over that Rafah crossing, the only crossing between Gaza and Egypt, in just a matter of hours from now. But we are hearing from sources tonight that it is not likely to be the case. We'll see when that could potentially happen. Anderson Cooper is here right after this.
Dry skin is sensitive skin too, and it's natural. Treat it that way with Aveeno Daily Moisture, formulated with nourishing prebiotic oat. It's clinically proven to moisturize dry skin for 24 hours. Aveeno.
Pretzel fanatics are freaking out. Give your taste buds a twist. We at Pretzels.com freshly bake over 45 varieties of chef-crafted gourmet pretzels in the heart of Pennsylvania. Get a new twist for someone you love or yourself at Pretzels.com.
Not flossing well? Then add the whoa of Listerine to your routine. New science shows Listerine is 5 times more effective than floss at reducing plaque above the gum line for a cleaner, healthier mouth. Listerine, feel the whoa.
Wow. Incredible. Amazing. My go-to is Lumify eye drops. Lumify dramatically reduces redness.
In 1 minute.
And look at the difference. My eyes look brighter and whiter for up to 8 hours. Lumify? It's kind of amazing. See for yourself.
A wide leaf filter? It's well designed, efficient. I appreciate that.
Leaf Filter's technology keeps debris out of your gutters for good. Guaranteed.
What more could you ask for?
Call 833 Leaf Filter today or visit leaffilter.com.
What if there was a hearing aid that could keep up with you. This is Jabra Enhance Select. It's a smart hearing solution that makes hearing aids more convenient and less expensive. It connects with your phone so you can stream calls and music. With Jabra Enhance Select's premium package, better hearing doesn't have to start in a doctor's office. It starts with a free online hearing test you could take almost anywhere. So you can get your hearing aids custom programmed for you and delivered in days. From there, you can fine-tune your settings with your remote audiology team 7 days a week, so your hearing aids work when it matters most. In fact, more than 95% of Enhance Select premium customers report hearing better with their friends, family, and colleagues. With Jabra Enhance Select, you can get the same advanced hearing aid technology and professional care you expect from a clinic at a fraction of the cost. Try it risk-free for 100 days. Visit JabraEnhance.com.
If you have moderate to severe Crohn's disease, Skyrizi is the first and only IL-23 inhibitor that can deliver clinical remission and endoscopic improvement.
Serious allergic reactions and an increased risk of infections or a lower ability to fight them may occur. Tell your doctor if you have an infection or symptoms, had a vaccine, or plan to. Liver problems may occur in Crohn's disease.
Control of Crohn's means everything to me. Ask your gastroenterologist about Skyrizi. Learn how AbbVie could help you save.
Stay 2 nights and get 5,000 bonus points. Book direct at bestwestern.com.
For muscle cramps and spasms, what's your move? The Hercules? Make the move to TheraWorks for fast muscle relief. Safe, gentle, and absorbs quickly for relief.
TheraWorks works.
Try TheraWorks and get back at it.
The first time you made a sale online with GoDaddy was also the first time you heard of a town named Dinosaur, Colorado.
I just got an order from Dinosaur, Colorado.
Start an easy-to-build, powerful website for free with a partner that always puts you first. Start for free at GoDaddy.com.
Today, Jewish families worried about being targeted in school, wearing symbols of the face, walking down the street, or going out about their daily lives. And I know many of you in the Muslim American community, the Arab American community, the Palestinian American community, and so many others are outraged and hardy, saying to yourselves, here we go again with Islamophobia and distrust we saw after 9/11. Just last week, a mother was brutally stabbed. A little boy, here in the United States, a little boy who just turned 6 years old was murdered in their home outside of Chicago. His name was Wadiha, a proud American, a proud Palestinian American family. We can't stand by and stand silent when this happens. We must, without equivocation, denounce anti-Semitism. We must also, without equivocation, denounce Islamophobia.
That was President Biden just a few moments ago in the Oval Office, making that emotional plea to Americans to denounce all forms of hate. Part of that primetime address that he delivered to the nation, also making the case for wartime aid to Ukraine and to Israel. CNN's Anderson Cooper is here with me, and we just heard from the White House, Anderson, that the president spoke to the uncle and the father of that 6-year-old boy who was killed simply, which we know is being investigated as a hate crime now. I mean, it was a really human moment in this speech where he was talking about, these big picture ideals of democracy and whatnot.
I do think that's something that people here in Israel have seen in President Biden over the last almost 2 weeks now, that has really struck them. The sort of, look, whatever your politics are, whatever you may think of the president based on political beliefs, this is a man who knows pain and knows loss and grief and has walked that lonely road for much of his life. And he's able in these moments, certainly he did that here in Israel, both in his initial comments and the comments he made here, to kind of touch that pain that so many people here are feeling. I mean, there's such that undercurrent of just shock and loss and what he terms the kind of that black hole in the center of your chest. So I think a lot of Israelis I've spoken to were surprised that this statesman is sort of talking in such personal terms. That's not something they see here a lot, that from what they said to me, but they liked it.
Yeah, and he seemed genuinely touched as he was meeting with the survivors, the first responders yesterday. But also in the speech tonight, he talked about the civilians in Gaza and what they're going through and these efforts to get aid in across the Rafah crossing, which he brokered this deal with the Egyptian president on the flight back from Israel yesterday. But we're hearing that right now it's not expected to go in just a few hours from now, like it was expected to. The Doctors Without Borders is saying a hospital, in Gaza is about 24 hours away from running out of fuel. I mean, these are massive concerns, and every moment counts for this aid.
Yeah, and the deal that President Biden talked about on Air Force One as he was heading back from Israel was that with El-Sisi was 20 trucks initially as a beginning, see how it goes. If aid isn't taken by Hamas, the President Biden wants a steady stream of aid going in. Obviously, Israel has serious concerns about what is the inspection of these trucks, what is coming in, who's actually going to be responsible for inspecting it, is the United Nations, who is it, and how is it being distributed. One of the concerns among humanitarian officials that we've heard from is if you send 20 trucks in to an area where there's hundreds of thousands of people who are desperate for food and clean drinking water and shelter, and they think these are the last and only 20 trucks coming in, there's no telling the chaos that 20 trucks can cause among hundreds of thousands of people. If the message is there's 20 trucks coming today, there's going to be 50 more tomorrow and 100 the next day, that can be more orderly. But I think there's a great concern about what happens when those trucks cross over, both from what happens with Hamas and also what happens with just the civilian population who are desperate.
Yeah, and 20 trucks is a small drop in the bucket. You're one of the first reporters today. We're here in Tel Aviv, but you went close to the border to one of these kibbutzes that was attacked. And you were one of the first ones actually in to see the aftermath. What did you see?
Yeah, the IDF allowed journalists in for the first time, so there were a number of journalists there, Israeli media and others. It was extraordinary. I've been asking to go to Nir Oz. I've been trying to get to Nir Oz. It's a mile and a half from the Gaza border, so the IDF is very careful on the security situation about who they allow in there. They continue to bury bodies. 5 bodies were buried today by a guy named Ron, who is sort of the caretaker there and lives there. It's all still there. I mean, the burned out cars, the blood in people's safe rooms, the blood in mattresses soaked on beds. It is a stunning scene, and it was because it's only a mile and a half from Gaza. It was one of the first places hit, and a huge number, of some 400 people. They believe about as many as 100 people are either dead or missing, which is 1/4 of the population.
Yeah. Well, I know we'll be seeing more of that tomorrow night. Anderson Cooper, thank you. Also tonight, as we are looking here at this speech from President Biden, we hear that this is a country still deep in mourning. You hear that from every single person that you talk to. It's so quiet here. So many survivors are not only grappling with loss, but still in disbelief that they were able to survive, those who lived when others around them were killed. That is such the case for a young American survivor. She moved here for what she thought was a better, peaceful life. She'll be here to tell her story right after this.
The Whole Story with Anderson Cooper is appointment viewing on Sunday nights. One whole story, one whole hour.
What are your biggest fears? The breaking of my brain is the concern.
You think you could have picked up a gun? You were dancing.
The world's best journalists dig deeper.
I'm about to do something that I haven't done before.
Into the stories they can't ignore.
Do you ever ask why police took so long?
Go in depth every Sunday night. The Whole Story with Anderson Cooper. Sunday at 10 on CNN.
Attention Medicare beneficiaries. This is an important message for everyone on Medicare. Attention everyone on Medicare. Today we are talking about 2024 Medicare Advantage plans. If you don't have a 2024 Medicare Advantage Part C plan, call now because there may be a Medicare Part C plan with additional benefits available in your zip code. Right now is the Medicare annual enrollment period. You can call now to see if there are any changes to your current Medicare plan in the upcoming year, or find out if you're eligible to enroll in a Medicare Advantage plan with additional benefits. Everyone on Medicare is encouraged to call. Call now and a licensed insurance agent can look up your plan and see if there are any changes to your current plan in the upcoming year. Call now during the Medicare annual enrollment period. Part C plans can change every year. Don't wait. Call before the Medicare annual enrollment period ends on December 7th for your free, no obligation 2024 Medicare benefits review. Call 800-882-0987. 800-882-0987. Attention Medicare beneficiaries. This is an important message for everyone on Medicare. Attention everyone on Medicare. Today we are talking about 2024 Medicare Advantage plans. If you don't have a 2024 Medicare Advantage Part C plan, call now because there may be a Medicare Part C plan with additional benefits available in your zip code. Right now is the Medicare annual enrollment period. You can call now to see if there are any changes to your current Medicare plan in the upcoming year, or find out if you're eligible to enroll in a Medicare Advantage plan with additional benefits. Everyone on Medicare is encouraged to call. Call now and a licensed insurance agent can look up your plan and see if there are any changes to your current plan in the upcoming year. Call now during the Medicare annual enrollment period. Part C plans can change every year. Don't wait. Call before the Medicare annual enrollment period ends on December 7th for your free, no obligation 2024 Medicare benefits review. Call 800-882-0987. 800-882-0987.
Hockey season begins with celebration. Time to celebrate again. Stop! I am a good zombie.
This October, spirits come home to rest all month long.
This place is really haunted. What a weird mystery.
With Hollow Stream on Disney Plus.
We're gonna scare you. Boom.
Home is where the hunt is.
It's time.
1 in 3 children is now at risk of going to school on an empty stomach.
When I'm hungry, my stomach starts to hurt a little bit. It's hard to think and concentrate. I don't have enough energy.
But there's hope. By supporting Toonies for Tummies, 100% of your donation gives hungry children in your community the chance to start their day with a much-needed nutritious meal.
When I eat breakfast, I have lots of energy. When at the gym, I can run really fast.
Donate online today. Join Poppy and Phil on CNN This Morning. Tomorrow at 6 Eastern.
The State Department has evacuated at least 1,500 Americans and their family members from Israel, but a spokesperson has told CNN that many are choosing to stay, including my next guest, Tally Gilberg, who is an American-born dual citizen. Tally lives on a kibbutz, a community of nearly 600 people, less than half a mile from Gaza. It's so close that one of Gaza's crossings is actually named for this kibbutz that she lived in. It's so close that she was no stranger to rocket fire. But on October 7th, she knew that what she was hearing was different, was not what she was used to. She shot this video outside of her window as she spent hours sheltering from Hamas. The soldiers you see here, that's the IDF. Despite the fear, the trauma, and the uncertainty, Tally plans to stay in her adopted country as a survivor even after that attack. And she joins me now, and I'm so grateful that you're here. And you grew up in New Jersey. You moved here and you were assigned to this kibbutz, but even after your service, you loved it so much that you decided to stay there. But I was watching your video that you posted from the day of this attack, and I want our viewers to just listen because you could hear the gunfire in the background of it. I mean, what was going through your mind as you sat there for so long?
Uncertainty, fear. I was very numb. I still am numb. Majority of the country is still numb. We're living hour to hour, not day by day. We don't know what the next hour is going to bring, what terrible news we will hear. There's still hundreds of people missing. And people are constantly getting notifications that their loved one is dead or is still trapped in Gaza or is dead in Gaza. What was going through my head for the most part was I wanted to make it out of here alive. We also didn't know what was happening when it was happening. Not only afterwards when I got out of the kibbutz did I really look at the media. When I felt safe to look at the media, I actually looked at the media and was shocked at what had happened during the day.
I mean, you must have been so scared to be in there by yourself alone. You're hearing what you know is not, you know what's happening is not normal, but you can't leave, you can't go and find out what's going on around you.
Yeah. There was, when, at the very beginning, around maybe 7:38, I got a phone call from someone on the kibbutz that knows I live alone and knows that his son lives across the hall, or like, across the hall from me. And he said for me to go be with him because he had a gun. And that's like, was when I really understood like the severity of this situation. I heard the gunshots. I was trying not to think exactly what was happening or that it was Hamas until, not only when I received a video from a friend here in Tel Aviv that Hamas was in Sderot, which is the city close to me, did I really understand like that this is not normal and that like it is better to be with someone that has a gun.
Yeah, well, and each kibbutz has its security, and I know that everyone in your kibbutz survived except one person who was a member of that security team, but also a friend of yours, Amir Naeem.
Yeah.
Can you just tell me about him?
So Amir's family is one of the big families on our kibbutz. Everyone knows them. They are constantly taking in lone soldiers like myself. And when I moved to the kibbutz in 2019, they took in one of my really good friends. So Amir was like a brother to him. So I knew Amir through my friends, but also Amir was a counselor to a group of lone soldiers in 2021. And those fellow Americans became my friends as well. And so I just got even more closer to Amir, and he's one of the most intelligent people I've ever met.
And he had just gotten married, and his wife is pregnant, I know.
Yeah, they celebrated their first anniversary a few days before this happened, and she's pregnant, and she only like told the public that after this all happened they were like not ready to tell the public. It's a very sad situation. We had his funeral the other day.
Did you go?
Yeah, everyone is very distraught. I saw people I had never seen cry before cry and bawl their eyes out. It was an army like funeral, so there was gunshots there, and that was very hard for all of us.
To hear that, it must have been very triggering.
Very triggering to everyone there. Maybe the country is gonna change protocol based on this event.
You talked about how you moved to this kibbutz, and you said it was one of your favorite places, that you felt peaceful there. I mean, how has this shattered your sense of security?
I still think that once I'm able to go back, I will feel secure there again, because it's my happy place. It's where I've built my home in Israel. A friend actually asked me this, if I would go back to live there, and I said I'd go back if I can tomorrow. It's my home. It's the apartment, my quiet corner of the world that I've made for myself, or it used to be the quiet corner of the world. Sometimes it wouldn't be so quiet with rockets, but we live in peace there. The people on my kibbutz, when the border was open, they would go to Gaza. They were friends with people in Gaza. I'm used to seeing Gazans come into Israel all the time to work. Like, I live right next to the crossing, and that's the crossing where people come for like medical care, for work.
Yeah.
So for me, we lived in peace, and we had like a sense of being together. I had friends on the base there when it was overtaken. My kibbutz is just a miracle that we're still here, and it's because of the great security team we have and Amir's sacrifice. There was also some people injured from the kibbutz during the fight.
Tali, I'm so sorry for what you've been through, and I'm grateful that you were able to even come and talk about it. I've heard from people who during this had just said, I marvel at how people can come and talk and speak publicly about something that they've witnessed that was so horrific. So thank you for that. And thank you for talking about it here as well.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Tally. And we'll be back in just a moment.
From pep in their step to shine in their coats. When people switch their dog's food to the farmer's dog, the effects can seem like magic. But there's no magic involved. It's just smarter, healthier pet food. It's amazing what real food can do.
A wide leaf filter? It's well designed, efficient. I appreciate that.
Leaf filter's technology keeps debris out of your gutters for good. Guaranteed.
What more could you ask for?
Call 833-LEAF FILTER today or visit leaffilter.com.
Consumer Cellular, this is Sam. How may I help you? This is a butt dial. Well, somebody's butt. Just thought I'd let you know that with Consumer Cellular, you can get the same exact coverage as the leading carriers, but for up to half the price.
The Keepsake Frames app makes it ridiculously easy to frame your favorite photos. Just choose a photo that you love, select the perfect frame, and you'll have your framed print delivered and ready to hang. Download the free Keepsake Frames app and start framing today.
I'll deal with this tomorrow.
You won't.
It's ripe in here.
My eyes are watering.
I'm a busy man.
Look how crusty this is.
Shameful.
It's just too much.
Not with this.
I'm tired.
Tide can tackle any pile.
That a tackle pun?
Just clean the pile, Ron.
Okay.
This too.
That was easy.
When stains and odors pile up, it's got to be Tide.
48% of Americans don't get enough magnesium, which is vital for bone, nerve, and muscle health. I recommend Qunol's extra strength high absorption magnesium. It gives you 100% of the daily value of magnesium. Qunol, the brand I trust.
When you're a small business owner, there's no such thing as 9 to 5. Days are longer, and business hours, well, they're anything but predictable, especially when you have clients like ours. When I considered payroll providers for my business, I looked for a solution that fit into my busy schedule. Short payroll makes running payroll fast and easy, so I can spend extra time with these guys.
Visit surepayroll.com/switch and get up to 6 months free. And find out what makes us different. Because small business is our business.
Hockey season begins with celebration. Time to celebrate
We just signed the lease on our third shop. My assistant went to customink.com to get new uniforms with all the locations. He found great products, uploaded new art, and had boxes sent to all the shops. Custom Ink makes it so easy. Get started today at customink.com.
When we started our business, we were paying like an arm and a leg for the postage. I remember setting up ShipStation. I think it was just like 1 or 2 clicks. Everything was up and running. I was printing out labels and saving money.
ShipStation saves us so much time. It makes it really easy and seamless. Pick an order, print everything you need, slap the label onto the box, and it's ready to go.
Our cost for shipping, like, we're cut in half, just like that.
ShipStation, the #1 choice of online sellers. Go to shipstation.com/try and get 2 months free.
Men, how many bathroom trips are you making each day? Try Super Beta Prostate Advanced, the #1 selling formula in its category. Made with Prostafend, a triple action blend to help reduce urges to urinate. Find it at Walmart or these retailers.
I'm Rafael Romo in Tel Aviv, Israel. This is CNN.
Closed captioning brought to you by Gilt. Visit Gilt.com today for up to 70% off designer brands.
Gilt has the designers that get your heart racing. Add insider prices, new every day. Hurry, they'll be gone in a flash. Designer sales at up to 70% off. Shop Gilt.com today.
The command will come. That is what the Israeli defense minister told troops today who are gathering near the Gaza border, also saying that they will soon see Gaza not from across the border, but from the inside. So as Israel is signaling that an invasion is close, the question, of course, is what that looks like and what will come next. CNN's Nick Robertson is near the Gaza border. Nick, what have you been seeing tonight?
Caitlin, it's not just the defense minister who's giving an indication that troops may be going into Gaza soon. I spoke with a couple of other government ministers. The Minister of Economy said, look, from the political side, we've already given the green light to the military. it's up to the military now when they go in. So the decision's taken. I was also speaking with the agriculture minister, who also used to be a head of one of the security services here, fought in Israel's military on many occasions. And he said some interesting things about what Gaza will look like after this military incursion, because that's something everyone's been asking. One of the things he said, look, we know that the defenses, we know that the Gaza border, 67 kilometers, about 50 miles long along that whole fence line, we know that that was a security weak point. We're going to radically change it. He said there will be a big buffer zone, a no-go zone, effectively a kill zone. No one will be allowed in that area, and that will be there to protect and make Israel safer and stop incursions coming out of Gaza. So that's one change. But in terms of the overall security change, and this would be a very big difference from where we're at today. He says that the security in Gaza, the access for the IDF in the future, will be like it is for the IDF in the West Bank at the moment, meaning they can go in and arrest people whenever they want to, on their terms. Sometimes it's a firefight, but it is nothing like it is going into Gaza. So what they're talking about is a big force that's going to take a long time to take substantial control inside Gaza, to completely eradicate, as they say, Hamas from the streets and from the community there. So this new future, he said, for Gaza is one where they will need to build a new authority structure there as well. Now, there's no indication of how likely this is to be successful, but this is the first time we've heard from senior government officials about their vision for what it looks like after the incursion. Right now, everyone really looking for any indications that the incursion's about to happen. Here from Sderot, we've been able to see this evening tank rounds fired in towards Gaza, heavy machine gun flares. We haven't seen that before, and the area it was happening in, if there was to be an incursion, that would be one of the places it would happen. Early days yet, but I think the expectation right now is it's really coming soon, Caitlin.
Nick Robertson, thank you for that report. And with me now is, of course, someone who has been very familiar with the Israeli military, the former National Security Advisor to the Prime Minister, Major General Yaakov Amidor, who is here tonight. Thank you. You heard from Prime Minister Netanyahu and other Israeli officials warning this is going to be a long war. How long do you think it'll be?
I think that there will be basically two stages. The first one, very intensive. It's to go into the area slowly and to be at the end in areas which are important to control the that we suppose to control afterwards. It will be a slow moving of big forces into the urban area to identify where the enemy centers of command and gravity are, and it will be separate inside, and then we will be there for a long time, few months probably, to clean the area, to go after the Hamas members, each headquarters that they have, each office that they have, to identify the underground tunnels and to
Which are
try.
quite complex. Do you think they'll get that intelligence on where the headquarters and whatnot are once they're across the border, or do you think they have a good sense of that now?
I think that all the headquarters that had been known, destroyed by the Air Force. We have to collect information and to make all the investigation of people inside, and slowly to identify the network of the which was prepared by the Hamas, and then to destroy it slowly and surely, and to have more information through the operation. It is something which will emerge through the operation. Not everything is known now.
Okay, so you think they'll learn a lot during the operation?
Yes.
But with this, it's clear what Israel's intent here. They say they want to eradicate Hamas's capabilities, their military capabilities. But if Israel is successful in that, who is in charge of Gaza? Does Prime Minister Netanyahu have a plan for that?
There are three options. One, that Israel will remain there. I think it will be a mistake. We don't want the responsibility for 2 million people with all the ramifications connected to that. I think that for the Palestinians, the best is if the PA will take responsibility, something that they lost because Hamas pushed all the members of Fatah out of Gaza,
Yeah,
killed
they
them.
basically have no power.
Yes, but if they come after us, after we killed Hamas, that will be much easier for them. And of course, from the outside we can help. But this is something that might not happen because the PA doesn't want to take the responsibility as well. So at the end, I think that Israel will have to disconnect itself from the Gaza Strip. We don't have a responsibility for the civilians. We have only one responsibility, is to destroy any attempt by anyone inside to rebuild military capability. We don't have, we are out of Gaza Strip, people don't remember, it's more than 15 years. We don't have any responsibility for any in area which we are not in. We don't have responsibility, we are not conquering the Gaza Strip.
But there's a
We
sense
are
of
out.
responsibility in the sense of the civilians who live there. It's not their
Why
fault
it is
what
ours?
Hamas did.
Why it is
Well,
our
you go in and you
responsibility?
conduct this massive bombing campaign. You're telling them to leave because, of course, what they're going to go in and do that, civilians would get killed, even if it's inadvertent. During that, I mean, I think people would say that there is a sense of responsibility for what happens to them next if you topple their
If we stay there,
leadership.
we have responsibility. But if we are going back to the border, and what we do is only to take care for any attempt to build new military capability inside, we don't have.
What if there's a vacuum created? Okay, so you feel you have no responsibility. You go in, you eradicate Hamas, you leave, but there's no leadership. I mean, we've seen that happen time and time again, where a vacuum is created and another terrorist organization
Yes, but
emerges.
you behave the 2 million Palestinians, they're like babies. They have responsibility for themselves.
Well, most of half of them are under 18 years old. They are pretty young.
It is their responsibility to build something which will be good for them and good for us, or good for them at least. I mean, we cannot be responsible for 2 million Palestinians that do not know how to build something for themselves. It's not our responsibility, it's their responsibility. We don't have responsibility for all the problems that occur in Syria or somewhere else.
Well, I have a lot of questions for you on what this could look like, and I want to have you back on that. But there's something that I was just having that conversation with Tally, who survived the attack on her kibbutz. I was watching Anderson Cooper's interview earlier with the sisters of a medic who could have left, but she stayed and she was killed in her kibbutz. And her sisters shared her last messages with Anderson, and one of them was, where is the military? Where is the military? You served for 36 years in the military. Where was the military on that day?
I think that it was a huge failure of the system, including the intelligence and the operational side. But this is something that we will investigate, and we'll find the solutions how to prevent it in the future after the war. Now we are focusing on the war. All our energy, all our thoughts, all our time is about how to win the war, and all your questions about the day after, the minute after the war, the hour after the war, investigation will take part in Israel. It's a democracy. The people will not let the army and the decision makers not to be under investigation. And we will find what went wrong, and many things went wrong, no question about it. But that will have to wait after the war, because the war itself is very problematic, very challenging. It is not going to be easy, and we should not waste any gram for any time or energy about something which is not connected to the need to win the war. And after that, everything is open. Everything.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they're still in leadership, so I think people would say it is connected. But we have much more to discuss. Thank you for coming on tonight and for
Thank
sharing
you
your time.
for the opportunity.
Yeah, at this very early hour here in Tel Aviv. Thank you,
Yes.
General. And we'll be back in just a moment.
Neither snow-capped mountains nor puddles of water, nor unexpected detours with a 20-foot drainage pipe can stop the ruggedly capable Telluride X Pro from getting you to your dinner reservation on time. Kia, movement that inspires.
Moving forward with node-positive breast cancer is overwhelming, but I never just found my way. I made it and did all I could to prevent recurrence. Verzenio reduces the risk of recurrence of HR-positive, HER2-negative, node-positive early breast cancer with a high chance of returning, as determined by your doctor when added to hormone therapy. Hormone therapy works outside the cell, while Verzenio works inside to help stop the growth of cancer cells. Diarrhea is common, may be severe, or cause dehydration or infection. At the first sign, call your doctor, start an antidiarrheal, and drink fluids. Before taking Verzenio, tell your doctor about any fever, chills, or other signs of infection. Verzenio may cause low white blood cell counts, which may cause serious infection that can lead to death. Life-threatening lung inflammation can occur. Tell your doctor about any new or worsening trouble breathing, cough, or chest pain. Serious liver problems can happen. Symptoms include fatigue, appetite loss, stomach pain, and bleeding or bruising. Blood clots that can lead to death have occurred. Tell your doctor if you have pain or swelling in your arms or legs, shortness of breath, chest pain, and rapid breathing or heart rate, or if you are nursing, pregnant, or plan to be. I'm making my own way forward. Ask your doctor about everyday Verzenio.
Not flossing well? Then add the whoa of Listerine to your routine. New science shows Listerine is 5 times more effective than floss at reducing plaque above the gum line for a cleaner, healthier mouth. Listerine, feel the whoa.
If you have this, consider adding this. An AARP Medicare Supplement Insurance Plan from United Healthcare. Medicare Supplement plans help by paying some of what Medicare doesn't and let you see any doctor, any specialist, anywhere in the U.S. who accepts Medicare patients. So if you have this, consider adding this. Call United Healthcare today for your free decision guide.
Hi, I'm Jill, and I've lost 56 pounds on Golo.
Hi, I'm Barry, and I've lost 42 pounds. Jill and I are a team. If she tells me to do something, I usually jump on board.
Golo was doable, it's realistic, and it's something we can do the rest of our lives.
My name is Marie. I'm 49 years old, and I'm a business owner. I own a lemonade and ice cream shop in Florida, so I can feel and see that my lines have gotten deeper just from a year out in the sun. I'm still Marie, and I got Botox Cosmetic. I did not want a dramatic change. I wanted something subtle, and I'm really, really happy with the results. It's still me, but with fewer lines.
Botox Cosmetic is FDA approved to temporarily make frown lines, crow's feet, and forehead lines look better. The effects of Botox Cosmetic may spread hours to weeks after injection, causing serious symptoms. Alert your doctor right away, as difficulty swallowing, speaking, breathing, eye problems, or muscle weakness may be a sign of a life-threatening condition. Do not receive Botox Cosmetic if you have a skin infection. Side effects may include allergic reactions, injection site pain, headache, eyebrow, eyelid drooping, and eyelid swelling. Tell your doctor about your medical history, muscle or nerve conditions, and medications, including botulinum toxins, as these may increase the risk of serious side effects. See for yourself at BotoxCosmetic.com.
Are you sick of UTIs? I had 8 in 1 year. This inspired my husband and I to start Eucora. Eucora makes proactive urinary tract supplements.
If you get UTIs, try Eucora. Eucora saved my life.
Try today at Eucora.com.
The House is now expected to hold its third vote for House Speaker at 10 a.m. tomorrow, and we have just learned a few moments ago Congressman Jim Jordan, who has not yet dropped out of this despite not having the votes, is going to hold a press conference at 8 a.m. tomorrow morning. He has been pledging to stay in the race. He has had 2 failed votes this week. Melanie Zanona, back on Capitol Hill, joins me now. Melanie, what are we expecting to hear from Jim Jordan at 8 a.m. tomorrow?
Well, Jordan is going to try to rally support for his flailing speakership bid. He was meeting with a number of those key holdouts tonight, trying to win over his opposition, but we're hearing it is not going over very well for Jim Jordan. So the big picture right now, Caitlin, is that the Republican Party is frankly a mess. Their nominee for Speaker, which is Jim Jordan, cannot get the votes he needs, but refuses to drop out of the race, preventing other candidates from getting in. There was also a heated closed-door meeting earlier today that devolved into yelling and screaming. Also, one member, Nancy Mace, just got blocked, I should say, by another member on Twitter because they were fighting. They also are starting to have personal threats. So there are concerns for member safeties for those Republicans who voted against Jim Jordan. So really, the House is in chaos right now with no speaker and no end in sight, Caitlin.
And a lot of cursing, it appears. Melanie Zanona, we'll see what's said tomorrow, maybe some expletives there. Thank you. We'll have more from the ground here in Israel right after this quick break.
I have moderate to severe Crohn's disease. Now there's Skyrizi.
control, and my clones means everything to me. Control is everything to me.
Feel significant symptom relief with Skyrizi, including less abdominal pain and fewer bowel movements at 4 weeks. Skyrizi is the first and only IL-23 inhibitor for Crohn's that can deliver both clinical remission and endoscopic improvement. The majority of people on Skyrizi achieve long-lasting remission at 1 year.
Serious allergic reactions and an increased risk of infections or a lower ability to fight them may occur. Tell your doctor if you have an infection or symptoms, had a vaccine or plan to. Liver problems may occur in Crohn's disease.
Ask your gastroenterologist how you can take control of your Crohn's with Skyrizi.
Control is everything to me.
Learn how AbbVie could help you save.
When did I call leaf filter? When I saw my gutters overflowing onto my porch.
Leaf filter is a permanent gutter solution, so you never have to worry about costly damage from clogged gutters again.
It's the easiest call you can make.
Call 833-LEAF-FILTER today or visit leaffilter.com.
When you're a small business owner, there's no such thing as 9 to 5. Days are longer, and business hours, well, they're anything but predictable, especially when you have clients like ours. When I considered payroll providers for my business, I looked for a solution that fit into my busy schedule. Sure Payroll makes running payroll easy, and its US-based customer service is there for me when I have questions, after hours, and even Saturdays.
Visit surepayroll.com/switch and get up to 6 months free and find out what makes us different. Because small business is our business.
This country has never been so divided. Are you a licorice lover or hater? We at licorice.com have 50+ gourmet flavors that you'll flip out over. Get some for yourself or a licorice lover in your life. Licorice lovers unite at licorice.com.
Stay 2 nights and get 5,000 bonus points. Book direct at bestwestern.com.
Sunday, how did Hamas orchestrate their massive attack on Israel? Sarah Seidner explores the history of this secretive and dangerous terror group and what comes next. The whole story with Anderson Cooper, Sunday at 10 on CNN.
You want to see a trick?
Sure.
I can make anything you want appear on that TV.
Superheroes.
Superheroes.
Well, cute animals.
Cute animals.
Wizards.
Wizards. Would you like my trick?
I saw the remote.
With you, keeping the whole family entertained. Search endless content with the magical Ignite TV voice remote. Rogers, with you all the way.
HPV is a virus that typically has no signs and symptoms, and it's spread via sexual activity. Unfortunately, condoms aren't giving us full protection from HPV. There's still those other body parts that are touching. HPV can stay asleep in a person's body for up to 40 years before it wakes up, and it's linked to a long list of cancers.
The HPV vaccine is a cancer prevention tool. We know it is very safe, it is very effective, and it's giving you long-term protection against cancer.
This is CNN, the world's news network.
Closed captioning brought to you by Mesobook.com.
We only represent mesothelioma victims and their families. Call for a free book.
Call 800-282-4444 or go to Mesobook.com.
Before we go tonight, just a quick note on those who have been so incredibly amazing to share their stories with us. People like Tally and others who have told us what it was like to live in that horrific day. And it's something that's had an impact on all of you. We've heard so many things, so much feedback from people on the impact of these personal stories and people asking how they can help, what they can do. CNN's Impact Your World team has updated its list of organizations that are vetted, that are safe to donate to, and if you want to do so tonight, you can go to cnn.com/impact, or you can just text the word relief to 707070. It's a safe way to donate in a way that so many people have asked about. I want to thank you so much for joining us as we are live here in Tel Aviv. We'll be back here tomorrow night with more important stories on the ground and reporting. CNN News Night with Abby Phillips starts right now.
presidential plea on what feels like the eve of a deadly ground invasion of Gaza from Israeli forces. That's tonight on Newsnight. Good evening, I'm Abby Phillip. Israel giving its forces the green light for a likely ground invasion 12 days after Hamas attacked and terrorized their nation. And fresh from his trip to the war zone, during what is only the second Oval Office address of his presidency, President Biden tonight is calling on Congress to provide aid for the wars in both Israel and in Ukraine, describing it as an inflection point for the world.
When terrorists don't pay a price for their terror, when dictators don't pay a price for their aggression, they cause more chaos and death and more destruction. They keep going, and the cost and the threats to America and the world keep rising. I know we have our divisions at home, but we have to get past them. We can't let petty, partisan, angry politics get in the way of our responsibility as a great nation. We cannot and will not let terrorists like Hamas and tyrants like Putin win. I refuse to let that happen. In moments like these, we have to remember who we are. We're the United States of America.
But it's a tall task to convince a skeptical nation. In the last 2 decades, the U.S. spent more than $2 trillion in Afghanistan, nearly $3 trillion in Iraq, and so far more than $113 billion has gone to Ukraine. And in a recent CNN poll, the majority of Americans are against sending more aid to Ukraine. But Biden is banking on the gravity of the message that if Ukraine falls and Israel suffers, the consequences to global democracies will be catastrophic, that an even more unstable Middle East is a threat to the homeland, and that autocracies will be empowered, whether it's Putin with Ukraine or China's Xi with Taiwan. But the question is, do Americans believe in that message, the messenger, and also the price tag? In just moments, Anderson Cooper joins me from Israel along with retired Lieutenant General Mark Hertling, plus reaction from Biden's speech from former U.S. Ambassador to Israel Tom Nides and Republican presidential candidate Tim Scott. But first, we want to begin with some major developments on the ground. Let's go right away to CNN's own Anderson Cooper. He is in Tel Aviv for us. Anderson, today the Israeli defense minister is saying that troops will soon see Gaza from the inside. That appears to signal that a ground invasion, which we've all been talking about, could really be imminent. What are you hearing and seeing on the ground today?
You know, first of all, people have been using the word imminent for almost 2 weeks now, so I'm always skeptical when I hear the word imminent, but that does not mean it is not perhaps imminent. I mean, it's certainly only a matter of time. Everything points to, you know, you have more than 300,000, more than 350,000 troops amassed on borders here in Israel, also in the border with Lebanon. You know, Nick Robertson was down in Sderot over the course of this week. Just tonight, he's been hearing machine gun fire, seeing flares. That's something which you don't hear all the time. You know, rockets, yes, explosions, yes, but machine gun fire is a little different. I talked to a colonel from the IDF who said, you know, Israel has done a number of, whether you call them probes or a number of cross-border operations in Gaza to try to gather information and target specific Hamas individuals. Nobody will say, nobody's going to telegraph exactly when something is going to happen, but this region is on the cusp of something, and I think, you know, everybody here is just, it's a matter of when and maybe weather and other events on the ground.
Yeah, this is always going to be a dual story, the military story and also the human story. And on that second part, we're learning tonight that the Rafah crossing, which leads from Gaza to Egypt, is expected to open tomorrow, but it is not expected to open tomorrow, I'm sorry, but it could open this weekend. What do we know about the status of this critical humanitarian aid mission that President Biden has pushed really hard to get going here?
Yeah, I mean, people have been talking about this opening for days. You know, Egyptian state media yesterday, Thursday, was reporting it was going to open Friday. Some other officials there sort of indicated maybe it would open Friday as well. Now the word is it's not going to open Friday. One U.S. official said to, you know, CNN that they hope maybe Saturday, but it is what they describe as a very fluid situation. There's a lot of competing interests and a lot of concerns. Israel is very concerned about who is examining these trucks, the content of these trucks, what is actually being shipped across the border, how is it going to be distributed. Israel is very concerned, as is the U.S., about this humanitarian assistance not falling into the hands or being stolen by Hamas. They say they're going to be watching that very closely, and that will affect future aid shipments. Humanitarian workers are very concerned about, the controls at the border. Is the road secure enough, and is the road repaired enough? There's been literally road construction on the Egyptian side to carry the weight of these heavy trucks, and with potholes and everything, which sounds very, kind of basic, but it is a factor. But also, there's a great concern among humanitarian relief officials who are very experienced with this sort of thing about if you send in 20 trucks and hundreds of thousands of people who are in the South think it's only going to be 20 trucks, there could be pandemonium of people trying to get what is in those 20 trucks. Whereas if the message is, it's going to be 20 trucks today, it's going to be another 50 trucks tomorrow, it's going to be 100 trucks the next day, and it's going to be a steady flow, then distribution can go more easily and more calmly. That is something that we are hearing also from humanitarian officials, and just about the logistics of this, which may sound boring and may sound, slow, but it is crucially important, because the last thing you want is a human catastrophe of people, which we have seen in relief situations over the decades. People panicked and people desperate for relief.
Yeah, it is, in fact, life or death for hundreds of thousands, if not millions of Gazans right now who are trying to get out of the way of what could be a growing war. Anderson, as always, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Thanks, Amy.
And joining me now to discuss the unfolding crisis in the Middle East is former U.S. Ambassador to Israel, Tom Nides. And we have to disclose that he is married to a CNN executive vice president. Tom, good to have you here. We have, as Anderson's been saying, we've been talking about this potential ground invasion now for basically the 12 days since this attack. But I'm wondering, is it possible for Israel to do what it says it wants to do, which is basically eradicate Hamas, without, in fact, completely destroying Gaza and a cost in civilian lives that could be significant?
Well, as we all watched tonight, the president's comments were clear to me, which is he was building the case for the importance of protecting the state of Israel, obviously discussing the Ukraine war as well, but just protecting the state of Israel, and also making sure that we are concerned and focused on the humanitarian costs as well for the innocent Palestinians that are in Gaza. Make no mistake, we got here because of Hamas's behavior. Hamas isn't liked in Gaza. They don't care about the Palestinian people. They're encouraging Palestinians to stay in their homes in northern Gaza, in Gaza City. This is what they have created. They're raining terror on their own people. And as obviously none of us, as I spent an enormous amount of time on the Palestinian issue when I was in Israel, you have to be compassionate. You have to feel, as the president articulated on TV today, his concern for that, which is why he insisted on making sure that the Egyptians open the border for humanitarian abilities and giving goods and services to the Palestinian people that are living in southern Gaza, and that's very important.
Yeah, and I do want to get back to that issue of the Rafah crossing in Egypt in just a moment, but President Biden this week, as he was coming back, as he was in Israel actually, issued a warning basically to America's friend, essentially. Don't let the rage consume you. Do you have an understanding of what he is warning about, and do you share the concern that Israel could potentially go farther than even it wants to go?
Now, I think what the president's been very clear about this. He has Israel's back, and he understands that Hamas is a terrorist organization. But also, the president, I believe, has a moral compass as well. And that's what you see. You saw that tonight on television when he talked about the importance of protecting Israel and protecting innocent lives. So he will step in and talk to the Israelis as friends do. But he has a moral authority, which he talked about tonight, and he will be talking to the Prime Minister and the leadership of Israel as this proceeds. But make no mistake, Hamas is the enemy here, and Israel needs to do what it needs to do to stop the terror in which they're raining upon the Israeli people.
So on the humanitarian front, as you pointed out, the president came up with an agreement with between Israel and basically Egypt, $100 million in humanitarian aid going into southern Gaza. But one of the concerns from the UN groups is that it's just simply not safe to even administer that aid. When you look at what we could be facing with a ground invasion, do you think it's necessary for there to be a true kind of safe humanitarian zone where humanitarian aid can not only come in, but it can actually get to the people who need it?
Absolutely. I think the president's articulated, the vice president's articulated this. I think the National Secretary Blinken, who's been in the region, who's been working this behind the scene on a daily basis. We need the ability for Israel to do what they need to do to eliminate the threat against Israeli people, at the same time to provide humanitarian abilities for those innocent Palestinians that want nothing to do with this, who are just basically bystanders living there and being pushed out of their homes and trying to save their lives. So yes, the reality is whatever way we can, working with the Egyptians and working with our allies to provide them the abilities to have that protection.
And on the Egyptians, just a final thing, I mean, Arab countries have been reticent to take in Gazan refugees. And first of all, nobody's really leaving right now, but if they were to leave, one of the reasons might be because they're concerned that they would not be let back into Gaza by the Israelis. Do you think there needs to be some assurances there to give people the possibility of being able to just escape the violence and then come back to their homes?
I think there's a lot of ways to try to do this. I think the most important message that you heard tonight from the president, you've heard from many people that are around this administration, both Democrats and Republicans, that we have to have humanity, that we have to protect people. At the same time, we have to do what it needs to do to protect the state of Israel. And by the way, one of the messages that the president said today is those other enemies out there, those in Lebanon, Hezbollah, or Iran, we're watching you. Don't get involved in this. And a strong message to those countries as well. So ultimately, the importance of this is to protect the state of Israel, try to do whatever they can to eliminate the threat, as well as try to protect the people, the innocent people that live in Gaza, as best we can.
All right, Tom Nikes, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate it. And up next for us, more on the looming invasion of Gaza. Lieutenant General Mark Hertling is here to tell us what to watch for. Plus, presidential candidate Tim Scott joins me on set to respond to the president's address tonight and why he doesn't support aid going into Gaza. We're also getting word that a U.S. Navy warship has intercepted missiles near Yemen that sources believe were heading to Israel. Stand by for that.
For muscle cramps and spasms, TheraWorks absorbs quickly for relief. So get back at it.
TheraWorks works.
For fast muscle relief, TheraWorks works. Try TheraWorks and get back at it.
Attention Medicare beneficiaries. If you have or are eligible for Medicaid, please listen closely. You may be eligible for a Medicare Advantage plan from WellCare with a zero or low plan premium. Call now. We can answer your questions and help you enroll over the phone. WellCare provides access to essential benefits that go beyond original Medicare, such as dental, vision, hearing, and prescription drug coverage with free home delivery, free over-the-counter healthcare items, free gym membership, and home-delivered meals. Plus, extra benefits like WellCare's telehealth services, including online doctor visits. WellCare is contracted with Medicare to provide plans that may be perfect for you. Call 1-877-297-3598. Now, that's 1-877-297-3598. WellCare.
Which hotel? Somebody say which hotel? I'm great at this. Dance your peeves in the spa-like bathroom. Or enjoy local craft beers with breathtaking views at the Cambria. Book direct at choicehotels.com.
Dry skin is sensitive skin too, and it's natural. Treat it that way. Aveeno Daily Moisture with prebiotic oat is proven to moisturize dry skin all day. You'll love our formula for face too. Aveeno.
The Keepsake Frames app makes it ridiculously easy to frame your favorite photos. Just choose a photo that you love, select the perfect frame, and you'll have your framed print delivered and ready to hang. Download the free Keepsake Frames app and start framing today.
You should empty that.
Angie,
What?
Angie that. It means connecting with skilled professionals for all your home projects, from repairs to renovations, so you can get the most out of your home. Get started today at Angie.com.
As America's veterans face challenges, DAV is there. DAV helps veterans and their families get the benefits they've earned. Support more victories for veterans. Go to DAV.org.
This is how Tosin lost 33 pounds on Noom weight.
I'm Tosin.
Noom gave her a psychological approach to weight loss.
Noom has taught me how you think about food has such a huge impact on your relationship with it.
Visit Noom.com and start your trial today.
With Ollie, you know you're giving your pup everything they need in a dog food, and nothing they don't. Our ingredient list is short, and our benefits list is long. Get started now and save on your first box.
We come from a long line of cowboys. When I see all of us out here on this ranch, I see how far our legacy can go.
That first time you take a step back.
I made that.
With your very own online store.
I sold that.
And you can manage it all in one place.
I built this.
And it was easy, with a partner that puts you first. GoDaddy.
We are watching the skies over Gaza tonight as Israel green lights a ground war against Hamas. And moments ago, President Biden made the case for wartime aid to Israel and to Ukraine.
American leadership is what holds the world together. American alliances are what keep us, America, safe. American values are what make us a partner that other nations want to work with. To put all that at risk if we walk away from Ukraine, we turn our backs on Israel, it's just not worth it.
And joining me to discuss President Biden's Oval Office address is Republican presidential candidate, Senator Tim Scott of South Carolina. Senator Scott, appreciate you joining us here. So President Biden, as you know, today he asked for $100 billion for Israel, for Ukraine, for the border, and for Taiwan. Would you support that legislation for $100 billion?
Well, thank you for the question. I certainly say I was frustrated by this speech. Terrorists bombed our ally Israel, and we heard more about Ukraine than we did our ally Israel. And the package itself has more money for Ukraine than it does for Israel. I think we would be better off having a single focus on Israel, giving them the resources they need to win this war, and then move on to other topics.
So do you disagree with the way that he connected these conflicts? He said that turning your back on Ukraine and on Israel is just not worth it. He says it's an investment in keeping U.S. troops out of future conflicts. You disagree?
I think we should definitely keep our troops at home. We can do that by making sure that our allies have the resources that they need. The one thing we know without question, with great certainty, is that Israel is in the beginning of a war. They need our single-minded focus on their conflict, and then we can pivot back to Ukraine. We can do both at the same time, by the way, but we'll first start with having the resources in the hands of Israel.
So some have said that Putin would actually love that if Congress decided that we can't deal with Ukraine right now, we've got to focus on Israel. Taking our eye off the ball in Ukraine might be just exactly what Vladimir Putin wants.
I think we can walk and chew gum. We've got $100 billion invested.
I think that's what President Biden's asking.
We have $100 billion in Ukraine. We have provided so far nothing to Israel other than our annual appropriations. If we want to focus on being successful in Israel, we need to focus on two things. Number one, making sure Israel has all the resources that they need. And number two, making sure that Iran pays a very high price for the challenges that they've brought into the Middle East, to include freezing the $6 billion that President Biden gave to Iran that helps support and fund terrorism. He said it himself for the first time so far since the conflict started. He said, Iran funds terrorism. Hamas says, thank you for the money. Freezing those assets should have happened before. Actually, he should never have given the assets.
Well, just to be clear, that money has not been spent, and it's not money that's directly going to Iran. I understand the point you're making. I'm just
perhaps we don't, because
just as a factual matter, so our audience understands, the money has not been spent.
Bottom line is simply this: that Your president gave $6 billion to pay for hostages. He gave it to the #1 state sponsor of terrorism. As a result of that, $6 billion, the price on every American head went high, and there's a price to be paid for that.
Just to circle back to...
I want to make sure that we get this point right, because I'm not misleading your audience, so let's make sure they understand.
I just want to...
$6 billion is really
just
high price that causes more terrorism.
I just want to clarify the question that I asked initially, which is, if $100 billion for all those priorities that the president listed came to the floor of the Senate, would you vote in support of it?
Well, it certainly matters how it's broken down, but number one,
if it's a package for all of those things, would you vote in support of it?
The details matter, so let me give you the breakdown of the details as we understand them. $60 billion for Ukraine and only $10 billion for Israel means that the president does not have his eye on the ball.
Let's leave it there for now. I want to ask you about $100 million that is aid that is being sent to Gaza. You've said recently that you oppose that.
Yes.
But I wonder, just putting aside some of the kind of political rhetoric around this,
Absolutely.
How is making life more miserable for Gazans something that helps Israel?
I'm glad you asked that question. Let's take a look at how this thing started on October the 7th. We saw babies decapitated. We saw babies burned. We saw women raped. We saw grandmothers taken. And Israel's response is to make sure that never happens again. To provide complete and total support for Israel means giving them the resources and the flexibility they need to
I understand, but I'm talking about humanitarian aid, which Israel, by the way, has agreed to.
The way you get there the fastest is making sure that every single support system that needs to be in place is there. And number two, I don't want a dime, a nickel, a penny ending up in the hands of Hamas. We know that at the end of the day, in the Gaza Strip, Hamas controls every penny.
This is not what I'm talking about here, and what this aid is not cash. We're talking about access to water, food, medical care.
Who's driving them in?
I guess what I'm saying, Senator, is if Israel has agreed with the United States to allow $100 million of humanitarian aid into southern Gaza, where they have asked for civilians to go to, why would you oppose that aid being provided?
Well, number one, I believe that making sure that every penny that America spends anywhere does not end up in the hands of terrorist organizations is my responsibility.
One of the other issues here is about the Americans who are in Gaza.
Yes.
And presumptively some of this aid would benefit them too. There are probably about 500 to 600 of them there. Do you think that they ought to be fending for themselves?
Well, I'll just say what I've said earlier, not on this show. Israel has provided those residents living in Gaza an opportunity to leave the vulnerable areas. And as a result of
that's where this aid is going, by the way.
As a result of that, they find themselves in a position to get out of harm's way. By doing that, we accelerate the path to victory for Israel, which then eliminates the need for a conflict.
One of the things that you've done today is introduced a piece of legislation that would pull back federal student aid for schools that, in your view, facilitate or promote events with an anti-Semitic message. You say that this hits them where it hurts, their pocketbooks.
Yes.
But I wonder, I mean, there are a lot of students who are beneficiaries of federal student aid who have nothing to do with these pro-Palestinian protests. Wouldn't this just hurt them?
Well, let's take a look back. In 2017, I introduced legislation for the definition of anti-Semitism to be codified on college campuses in the same way that we use it in state departments. What we've seen on college campuses since October 7th is kids protesting, it's their constitutional right, asking for genocide of Jews, murdering of Jews, supporting terrorism. For those universities and colleges that do nothing to stamp out that kind of racism, discrimination, and frankly the support of genocide, that is a problem with American tax dollars.
But again, doesn't that just penalize people who may have had absolutely nothing to do with it? That's a very small minority of anybody who's on these college campuses. And beyond that, I mean, people have raised questions about, you may You've described it a certain way.
Well, actually, it's the way that it is. Just take a look at the videos.
I'm just gonna, it's fine how you've described it. That's your view of it.
Yes, ma'am.
Some of the protesters would say that we might be penalized simply for advocating for Palestinians. Doesn't this risk infringing on their freedom of speech?
No, I actually, the first thing I said was their freedom of speech is protected. You do not have the freedom to encourage genocide. You don't have the freedom to say, let's murder people in our country. You don't have the freedom to say, we're going to support terrorism, and frankly, supporting terrorism means supporting the death of Americans and others. I think with my tax dollars, that is a part of the federal spending, if colleges and universities are not willing to push back on hate on their college campuses, not the expression of disagreements, but saying, let's murder people, that leadership should be punished.
The leadership should be punished, but I think you would agree that students would be as well.
Let us be clear here. The universities are responsible for the actions on their campuses. The president himself said, we should root out hate, but he didn't talk about the squad. He didn't talk about the universities where we find the hate being fomented.
I want to ask you about your presidential campaign. We're in the middle of this cycle. Just today, the New York Times is reporting that your super PAC is pulling millions of dollars in ads this fall. And according to a memo obtained by the Times, the chairman of the super PAC wrote to its donors saying, we aren't going to waste our money when the electorate isn't focused or ready for a Trump alternative. Do you agree that the electorate isn't ready for a Trump alternative?
Well, I don't run the super PAC, so I can't tell you exactly what that memo meant, but what I can tell you that it focuses on is reserving our resources until later in the campaign so that as we get close to the January 15th date of the Iowa caucus, we have the resources to spend effectively. In this current news cycle, breaking through this current news cycle seems to be impossible. So any alternative to the former president will not have actual opportunity to showcase why they should be the alternative.
And there's a presidential debate coming up. Will you be on the debate stage?
I will be on the debate stage.
You've met the requirements?
Indeed.
If your campaign doesn't gain more momentum in the coming weeks, would you consider dropping out?
Oh, of course not. We believe that America's ready for an optimistic, positive messenger who is anchored in consistently conservative values.
I want to ask you about one more thing. This is an audio message that was received by the wife of one of your colleagues in the House as a result of all of this rancor over the House Speaker vote. I'm going to play it for you.
Warmongering piece of shit. So listen, you're going to keep getting calls and emails. I'm putting all your information over the internet now. Everybody else is, and you will not be left alone because your husband, Jim Jordan, or more conservative, or you're going to be molested like you can't ever imagine. And again, non-violently.
What do you make of that?
Well, unfortunately, that's disgusting and reprehensible and unfortunately consistent with dozens of messages that I get on a consistent basis. I will say that public officials and their spouses and their families are greater targets than we've ever been. It's not only unfortunate, it's criminal.
Senator Tim Scott, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate you giving us some time today.
Yes, ma'am. It's good to be with you.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
An American warship shooting down missiles that may have been intended for Israel. A live analysis next. Plus, Lieutenant General Mark Hertling joins me at the map on what to expect in this looming ground invasion. This is CNN's live special coverage.
Dozens of rockets coming in here. Those interceptions right above us.
We have been hearing repeated exchanges of gunfire.
You can see the scale of the destruction.
If you know anything about what they do to people in Gaza, that is worse than death. My children and grandchildren experienced a living hell.
How difficult is this fight going to be on the ground?
We have no other place to go.
Breaking news coverage continues live from Israel.
With Circle, your water is deliciously flavored at the turn of a dial with 0 sugar and 0 calories. And Circle has over 40 flavors, so your water can be as unique as you are. Try Circle. Your water, your way. Now with even more flavors. Available at Walmart or drinkcircle.com.
A wife
My leaf filter, it's well designed, efficient. I appreciate that.
Leaf Filter's technology keeps debris out of your gutters for good. Guaranteed.
What more could you ask for?
Call 833 Leaf Filter today or visit leaffilter.com.
When you're ready to begin treatment for chronic lymphocytic leukemia, Calquence helps you do the fighting, and you can do the exploring. You can do the splashing, the sightseeing, and the playing. Calquence is an oral targeted therapy for CLL. More patients begin with Calquence than any treatment of its kind, and Calquence is proven to work better than chemoimmunotherapy in patients with previously untreated CLL. Calquence may cause serious side effects which may lead to death. These include serious infections with fever, chills, or flu-like symptoms, and bleeding problems that may increase with blood thinners. Decreased blood counts are common and can be severe. New cancers have happened, including skin cancers. Heart rhythm problems with fast or irregular heartbeat, dizziness, feeling faint, chest discomfort, or shortness of breath have happened. Tell your doctor if you have bleeding, heart rhythm, or liver problems, infection, or if you are or plan to be pregnant or breastfeeding. Calquence helps you do the fighting, and you can focus on the things you're loving. Ask your doctor if Calquence is right for you.
Lose weight fast with Nutrisystem's Partner Plan. Together, lose up to 18 pounds in the first 2 weeks. The Partner Plan is a great value. Partners save 15% more money versus an individual plan. Plus, lose up to 20% more weight than doing it on your own.
Together, we lost 85 pounds with Nutrisystem.
Get food for 2 people shipped free every 2 weeks. Save 15% more money and lose up to 20% more weight than doing it on your own. Call or go online to get started right now.
Sunday, how did Hamas orchestrate their massive attack on Israel? Sarah Seidner explores the history of this secretive and dangerous terror group and what comes next. The whole story with Anderson Cooper, Sunday at 10 on CNN.
Imagine the moment when your world comes back into focus. Healthy vision means kids can go to school, parents can provide for their families, and seniors can stay independent. For 60 years, Operation Eyesight has partnered with communities to prevent blindness and restore sight. We believe everyone deserves eye health care regardless of age, gender, or ability to pay. Visit OperationEyesight.com to donate today for all the world to see.
It can be hard to keep track of which vaccines are recommended and when. The Canadian Lung Association can help. Getting a COVID-19 booster shot this fall will help protect you against the more recent variants of the virus that causes COVID-19. This is especially important if you're one of the millions of Canadians living with chronic lung disease. If you're 65 or older, have a compromised immune system, or are otherwise at high risk, speak to your healthcare provider about getting vaccinated against pneumonia. For more information, visit lung.ca.
Join Poppy and Phil on CNN This Morning, tomorrow at 6 Eastern.
Israel is inching closer to launching a ground invasion into Gaza, and one official says that the army has been given a, quote, green light to wipe out Hamas. I'm joined here at the wall by CNN military analyst and retired Lieutenant General Mark Hertling. General Hertling, this ground invasion that is coming, we expect it to be up here in this northern area of Gaza. But when we talk about a ground invasion, what can we expect? Are we talking about door-to-door, hand-to-hand combat? And based on what we've seen, what indications do you get about how Israel's prepared?
You see in this film, Abby, a lot of tanks. That's a Merkava tank. It's a specific kind of Israeli tank. Israel has called up 300,000 soldiers. A lot of armored equipment. They're going to be fighting street to street, in buildings, high rises, but most importantly, they're also going to be fighting underground.
Yeah,
Hamas, Hamas has expanded these tunnels since 2014, and we'll talk about that in just a second. But there is almost 300 miles of these tunnels, and as you can see, walking through one of them, this is typical. It's not a subway tunnel. You have to go through these single file. They go off in different directions. It's exceedingly tough as an infantryman to fight in.
And some of them are not even as sophisticated as this. We've had guests on who say that some of them are basically in mud.
Yeah, there are some that you literally have to crawl into to get in there. But it is in here where we're seeing some of the hostages and human shields being taken.
Yeah, I want to get to one of the other developments today, which is that the U.S. says that they basically have intercepted some missiles coming from Yemen that were believed to be headed toward Israel. What can you tell us about what's going on here, especially when it comes to this question of a wider conflict.
Yemen became the subject du jour today because they did fire a couple of drones and missiles. Here's Yemen right here. That probably occurred, there we go. That probably occurred close to the Gulf of Aden. What you saw, what a Navy ship saw as it was going up into the Gulf, was 2 drones, a couple of missiles. They engaged them, they shot them down. But this is just one of many things that occurred today. Things going on in Hezbollah in southern Lebanon. We had 2 Israelis killed in Egypt, in the Sinai. We had several of the professional military fronts in both Syria, Iraq, and Iran rising up. These are those professional militias, if you will, that have received a call to fight on behalf of the Palestinians. So what we're seeing is a prediction that the supreme leader of Iran had was rise up, help your Muslim brotherhood. That's part
and so far, more or less isolated, but U.S. military clearly watching this very closely.
Yeah, absolutely. Based on the uprisings the other night after the hospital event, you're seeing a lot of people very upset about what Israel is about to do in the Gaza.
All right, General Mark Hartling, thank you as always for breaking all of that down for us. And up next, we'll talk about the irony of a Democratic president asking Americans to help fund 2 wars, plus a stunning twist in the election interference case in Georgia. Sidney Powell pleading guilty on the eve of her trial, which may signal trouble for Donald Trump. Gabriel Sterling joins me to react along with Geraldo Rivera and Anna Navarro.
If you're like I was, you're tired of worn-out plastic mats under your office chair. They dent and crack, and they're uncomfortable to roll on. I found a premium alternative, a glass chair mat by Vitraza. I liked it so much, I bought the company. I'm George Pardo, president of Vitraza. Our glass chair mats are made of super strong glass and protected with a nanotech coating, so you'll always get a smooth, easy glide. And they're beautiful. Tired of replacing plastic? I promise this is the last chair mat you'll need. And we give you a lifetime warranty. Comfort, style, durability. A Vitraza glass chair mat will completely transform your workspace. Home office or office. We stock 18 popular sizes, and we ship free to anywhere in the lower 48. Get the look you deserve. I invite you to shop online at Vitraza.com. Use promo code TV and save 10% on any glass chair mat at Vitraza.com.
Meet the Taylor family. They no longer pick up their ladder to clean the gutters, since they picked up the phone and called Leaf Filter. Their low monthly payments are affordable. Their gutters are no longer a hassle. Now only water flows through their gutters. No debris, no damage. Leaf Filter gave them clog-free gutters for a lifetime. The Taylors and over 1 million other homeowners all choose Leaf Filter. Call or log on today to save 20% off. Call 1-833-LEAF-FILTER or visit leaffilter.com for your free gutter inspection and estimate.
You can't buy a best friend, but you can adopt one.
This is a keepsake frame. This is actually a photo from my wedding. I'm Adam Weiss, founder and CEO of Keepsake, the mobile app that makes it easy to have your photos printed, framed, and shipped to your doorstep. You just choose a photo that you love, you can preview it in over 100 frames, and in a couple of days, you're going to receive your photo in a beautiful, handmade frame. So if you've got a special photo on your phone, install the free Keepsake app. We would love a chance to frame it for you.
I have a structured settlement and I need cash now. Call J.G. Wentworth, 877 cash now. I have an annuity, but I need cash now. Call J.G. Wentworth, 877 cash now.
It's your money. Use it when you need it.
Call J.G. Wentworth, 877 cash now.
Our mission here at CNN is that the news comes first. That's the promise of the Situation Room. We work as hard as we can to get the facts.
The Situation Room with Wolf Blitzer, tomorrow at 6 on CNN.
Those may look like handprints on your Flair sweater, but you just see happiness. Blair clothing is meant to be lived in. It fits your life. Wet paws, unconditional love. A little mulch, a day well spent. Blair also fits you. Easy to wear with flattering styles. Easy to love with comfy fits. And easy to buy with great prices. The Blair Fit, clothing that fits your life, body, and budget. Get $10 off and free shipping at Blair.com with promo code Blair23.
These politicians can never agree.
Emma, we don't always agree. Like, you're into politics, it stresses me out.
You sleep hot, I sleep cool.
You like sleeping in luxury, I like spending less.
I guess that's why we agreed on this Satva mattress.
Maybe America needs a Satva.
At least we'd be comfortable disagreeing. Satva, luxury mattresses made affordable.
I'm Erin Burnett in Tel Aviv, and this is CNN.
We're showing you here live pictures of Gaza where Israel is expected to launch an imminent ground invasion. And new polls tonight show that there are mixed reviews for President Biden's handling of this crisis in Israel and the Hamas conflict so far. 44% of Americans approving. That's identical to his ratings for Russia's war in Ukraine. And joining me now is former Fox News host Geraldo Rivera and also CNN political commentator Ana Navarro. It was an important speech for the president because he rarely does Oval Office addresses and clearly did it for a reason because he felt he had to sell this moment to the American people. Do you think that he was able to do that? I mean, he may need to sell this to his own party, by the way, who's typically not interested in funding wars.
Well, I'm not sure how much the political parties have to do with it, Abby, because when I started as a young reporter covering the Yom Kippur War, October 1973, Richard Nixon, a Republican, was still the president, and he came through, or the United States came through, the arsenal of democracy came through as Israel faced an existential crisis. Now, if we don't screw this up with this nonsense over the Speaker of the House and this coup attempt, another coup attempt by radical Republicans in the House of Representatives, then I think Israel will manage to get through this worst crime they've suffered since the Holocaust. I mean, the rapes, the mutilations, you've talked about it, we've all talked about it so much. I think that we will step up to the moment and deliver what Israel needs to defend itself.
How do you think he did?
I thought this was a very important speech and very significant speech. This whole week has been incredibly significant when it comes to Biden. He has shown tremendous moral clarity at a moment when there is such chaos in Congress and when there's such disagreement and discord in America. And I think Joe Biden has been unwavering in America's support of Israel, the special relationship, but also has been unwavering in reminding Americans that we are not a place where there is hatred, that we are not a place that fosters anti-Semitism or Islamophobia. And I thought it was incredibly important today that he spoke about American values. He thought about what America means to the world. He also spoke about the little boy, the 6-year-old boy who got stabbed to death, the little Muslim boy who got stabbed to death by the wacko man. And I think it's important to weave all those things in because this is a very difficult moment for Israel, of course, for Gaza, of course, but also for us here in America. We are all very affected.
I mean, from a political perspective, though, he has some potential roadblocks to get around, and one of them is the left. I want to just play for you what Rashida Tlaib said this week. A lot of pain and anger in this clip. Just listen.
President Biden, not all America's with you on this one, and you need to wake up and understand that. We are literally watching people commit genocide and killing the vast majority just like this, and we still stand by and say nothing. We will remember this.
In his words, you hear him talking about Palestinians and their plight and pushing for humanitarian aid. But I can tell you, I mean, I've gotten emails from Democratic groups attacking Biden tonight for not doing enough on Palestinians.
I think, first of all, Rashida Tlaib is Palestinian origin. If it was Puerto Rico that was being bombed, I would have, deep emotional investment in it also. I feel awful for everybody on both sides. It's one thing to say Israel is protecting itself against this awful crime that was committed against the Jewish people. But it's another thing when your kinsmen, your landsmen, are being bombed as Israel tries to get Hamas, get the mass murderers. There are 1,500 mass murderers that are hiding in the tunnels under Gaza. So I feel for her. I feel the anguish of her and others similarly situated. But this is a terrible, terrible crisis Israel is facing. The Palestinian people also. What happens when Israel sends the forces into the tunnels to get those hostages out? Will the hostages survive the worst hostage crisis in Israel's history? How many civilians will die in the process? Can America stomach the blood that will necessarily be spilled? This is, one thing I talk about my long experience in the region. If you think this is bad, it's going to get worse. Pessimism always prevails. The pessimist is always right. And when you add it, again, I come back with the lunatic fringe of the Republican Party depriving the United States of an effective House of Representatives. I think that we're in for a rocky ride.
But you know what else are depriving the United States of, which I think is really important to mention? It is unbelievable that at a time when we are in this situation, when there's 2 aircraft carriers in the region, when there is a marine contingency at the Strait of Hormuz, there are 350 appointments to the military that cannot get confirmed because there is one man, Tommy Tuberville of Alabama, holding all those appointments up. This is not a time for that. And I really wish all Republicans in the Senate, his colleagues, Mitch McConnell, all his colleagues would speak up on this because we need all hands on deck. And this is irresponsible. Irresponsible for nothing other than performance.
It's an important point. The dysfunction is actually in both chambers. But just in tonight, Senator Mitt Romney, talking about his own party, talking about some of this phenomenon, he says Fox News is partly responsible. He says it's hard to imagine, but Tucker Carlson is turning the GOP into the pro-Russian, pro-authoritarian party. And that's not what it used to be. This is in a forthcoming book by McKay Coppins about Romney. Is he right?
I think that Mitt Romney is the most honorable man in the United States Senate. I think that his politics and mine are exactly in sync. When he says that about Tucker Carlson, I don't know what Tucker Carlson believes. He says one thing in secret text messages, and he says on the air. So I don't know really what is in his mind. In terms of the Republican Party and authoritarianism and all the rest of that, we need some sober, moderate, patriotic people to put aside their own malignant narcissism and get going with the business of the nation. Now, 2 existential crises. Ukraine, invaded by Russia, has to fight off against a hugely superior foe, and then, of course, in Israel, where you have so much going on, you need the country to be united, not have Matt Gaetz run off with the government.
I have to say this about Mitt Romney, who I've known for a long time and is a friend of mine. Criticism doesn't come naturally to him. He's a very nice, civil man, but I think he's free to speak truth. And I think he feels the need to do it because he feels that the Republican Party needs to be rescued from itself.
Yeah, not running for re-election, and so he can certainly speak his mind. Ana Navarro and Geraldo Rivera, both of you, thank you. And up ahead, we've got a lot more to talk about, including the Trump ally who peddled these outlandish lies about the last election, pleading guilty into a Georgia election interference case. Will Sidney Powell now testify against Donald Trump? That's next.
Oh, why leaf filter? It's well designed, efficient. I appreciate that.
Leaf Filter's technology keeps debris out of your gutters for good. Guaranteed.
What more could you ask for?
Call 833 Leaf Filter today or visit leaffilter.com.
I will never again lose to my brother, decided Issa, because I've switched to consumer cellular, and And now I get the same coverage he's got for half the cost. I'm the one who wins. Birds, when freedom calls, we're here to answer.
Who's that? It's my puppy. Cancer. It's different in a child. Because your child's still growing. I had 14 rounds of chemo. There's thousands and thousands of kids all over the world who need help.
This is my first time having cancer. And it's the very worst.
St. Jude Children's Research Hospital works day after day to find cures and save the lives of children with cancer and other life-threatening diseases.
It's scary to watch your kid battle and fight for their lives.
1 in 5 children diagnosed with cancer in the U.S. will not survive.
Childhood cancer is hard. It's a long road. You just have to give. You have to give someone that hope. And especially with them being so young.
Please call, go online, or scan the QR code for only $19 a month. Families never receive a bill from St. Jude for treatment, travel, housing, or food, so they can focus on helping their child live.
She grew up in this. So when we go to St. Jude, she's happy because that's her home. Every time I take her to the doctor, she's excited because she gets to play. And that's all because of St. Jude.
When you call or go online with your credit or debit card right now, we'll send you this St. Jude t-shirt you can wear to show your support to help St. Jude save the lives of these children.
Si St. Jude no existiera, mi hijo no estaría vivo. Mi hijo sería un angelito.
Let's cure childhood cancer together.
How do we decide what hotel to book? Fear not. I got you. Choice Hotels has a hotel for every type of stay. Like a comfort with the kiddos. Spacious. That's what they all say. Stay twice and get a free night when you book direct at choicehotels.com.
We really don't want people to think of feeding food like ours as spoiling their dogs. Good, real food is simple. It looks like food, it smells like food. It's what dogs are supposed to be eating.
The first time you connected your GoDaddy website and your store was also the first time you realized.
Well, we can do anything. Cheesecake cookies? The Chookie!
Manage all your sales from one place with a partner that always puts you first. Start today at GoDaddy.com.
A stunning twist tonight in the Georgia election interference case against Donald Trump and his allies. One of his co-defendants pleading guilty for her role in the breach of Georgia's election systems. And as part of the plea, Sidney Powell now faces years of probation, and she must testify against her co-defendants. Now remember, she was one of Donald Trump's most outspoken lawyers who pushed these outlandish conspiracies and flat-out lies.
What we are really dealing with here and uncovering more by the day is the massive influence of communist money through Venezuela, Cuba, and likely China.
I think the Justice Department has known about this issue for a long time and turned a blind eye to it.
The software that goes in other computerized voting systems here as well, not just Dominion, were created in Venezuela at the direction of Hugo Chavez.
As far as I know, this is the first case of abject fraud and obtaining a coup of the United States of America.
I wonder how much the CIA actually had a role in starting this kind of program to begin with.
President Trump won by a landslide. We are going to prove it.
It should be that he can simply be reinstated, that a new inauguration date is set, and Biden is told to move out of the White House, and and President Trump should be moved back in.
As part of that plea deal, prosecutors want Powell to write a letter of apology to the citizens of Georgia. And I asked Gabriel Sterling, the chief operating officer at the Georgia Secretary of State's office, what he thought about all of that.
It needs to be a full accounting. I just don't want a pro forma, hey, I'm sorry. I mean, this caused real and lasting damage to our republic And like I said, to families. I don't know how you measure the impact of this because of what it's done to the American people and the faith in elections. And I mean, the voters have rejected election denialism across the board. And every time we have one of these kind of cases comes up, there should be another leg getting knocked off of that because it just shows it wasn't based on facts or truth. It was based on a grift and a lie.
And you can watch my full interview with Gabriel Sterling on X, also known as Twitter. And much more ahead on the war between Israel and Hamas, including the Israeli government giving the green light for a likely ground invasion.
This is a keepsake frame. This is actually a photo from my wedding. I'm Adam Weiss, founder and CEO of Keepsake, the mobile app that makes it easy to have your photos printed, framed, and shipped to your doorstep. You just choose a photo that you love, you can preview it in over 100 frames, and in a couple of days, you're going to receive your photo in a beautiful, handmade frame. So if you've got a special photo on your phone, install the free Keepsake app. We would love a chance to frame it for you.
For muscle cramps and spasms, what's your move? The Hercules? Make the move to TheraWorks for fast muscle relief. Safe, gentle, and absorbs quickly for relief. TheraWorks works. Try TheraWorks and get back at it.
We're being flooded with false information. But together, we can help protect our communities before it's too late. Let's care before we share.
If you're like I was, you're tired of worn-out plastic mats under your office chair. They dent and crack, and they're uncomfortable to roll on. I found a premium alternative, a glass chair mat by Vitraza. I liked it so much, I bought the company. I'm George Pardo, president of Vitraza. Our glass chair mats are made of super strong glass and protected with a nanotech coating, so you'll always get a smooth, easy glide. And they're beautiful. Tired of replacing plastic? I promise this is the last chair mat you'll need. And we give you a lifetime warranty. Comfort, style, durability. A Vitraza glass chair mat will completely transform your workspace. Home office or office. We stock 18 popular sizes, and we ship free to anywhere in the lower 48. Get the look you deserve. I invite you to shop online at Vitraza.com. Use promo code TV and save 10% on any glass chair mat at Vitraza.com.
Clogged gutters can cause big problems fast. Until now. Call 833 Leaf Filter today for your free gutter inspection.
I've had terrible flooding problems on my porch. Now I understand why.
Right now, Leaf Filter is offering a free inspection on your schedule. Leaf Filter is a permanent gutter solution, so you never have to worry about costly damage from clogged gutters again.
Call us today and schedule your free inspection.
To schedule your free inspection, call 833 Leaf Filter today or visit leaffilter.com.
The Whole Story with Anderson Cooper is appointment viewing on Sunday nights. One whole story, one whole hour.
What are your biggest fears? The breaking of my brain is the concern.
You think you could have picked up a gun? You were dancing.
The world's best journalists dig deeper
I'm about to do something that I haven't done before.
into the stories they can't ignore.
Do you ever ask why police took so long?
Go in depth every Sunday night. The Whole Story with Anderson Cooper. Sunday at 10 on CNN.
Stop! I am a good zombie!
This October,
Trick or treat!
spirits come home to rest all month long.
This place is really haunted.
What a weird mystery. With Hollow Scream on Disney Plus.
We're gonna scare you. Boo.
Home is where the hunt is.
It's time.
From their structured settlements, annuities, and lottery winnings. Many have gotten lump sums of cash now and still continue to receive regular payments going forward. The bottom line is that it's your money, and it's your right to get the cash you need now. Call J.G. Wentworth at 877-CASH-NOW. Learn how to get the cash you need now from your structured settlement. That's 877-CASH-NOW, or visit jgwentworth.com. Representatives are available now.
I'm Manu Raja on Capitol Hill, and this is CNN.
Closed captioning brought to you by InventHelp. Call 1-800-710-0020.
Do you have an invention idea but don't know what to do next? Call InventHelp today. They can help you get started with your idea.
Call now. 800-710-0020.
And that's it for me. Thank you for watching Newsnight. Passing the baton now to Laura Coates Live. It starts right now. Hey, Laura.
Oh, I love this relay race. It's like a track team. I love it.
You got
I can't run as fast as you, though, I'm sure. Abby, but nice to see you. I'll see you right back here tomorrow,
Have a good
okay?
show.
Thank you. Well, a key witness flips. What will she say under oath? And about the former president of the United States. That's tonight on Laura Coates Live. Guilty. Not accused, not allegedly, guilty. Now that is the word that now describes a former member of Trump's inner circle. Attorney Sidney Powell pled guilty today to 6 counts of conspiracy to commit intentional interference with performance of election duties. And remember this moment. This is what she said. Well, remember this about the Kraken?
I'm going to release the Kraken.
Well, I happen to love a good Clash of the Titans reference, but in this case, she didn't release anything. And remember, the Sidney Powell was saying one of the theories about Hugo Chavez in Venezuela?
The software that goes in other computerized voting systems here as well were created in Venezuela at the direction of Hugo Chavez to make sure he never lost an election.
Remember her legal defense in the Dominion case? No reasonable person would believe her election fraud claims, even though she was saying them. Now, she was facing 7 felony charges, including a violation of Georgia's racketeering law, and had been facing jail time. But now, it's just probation, not jail time the prosecution is asking for, and that's all, right? Well, not exactly. You better believe that when a prosecutor makes a plea offer, as she seems to have gotten, there's going to be some conditions. She will have to testify in future trials, as in possibly testifying against her now former co-defendants. And one of them is a man by the name of Donald Trump. Will that come to pass? We'll have to see. We have a lot to talk about with my expert guests. We've got Michael Moore, former U.S. Attorney for the Middle District of Georgia, and former federal prosecutor Elliot Williams is also here tonight. Plus, on a very busy news night, President Biden's Oval Office address to the nation. But did his message to the American people land with the American people? Will it come down to the emotion or the numbers? We'll go to the magic wall to break down what Americans do think about aid and the scope and the tenure of that aid to Israel, and also don't forget about Ukraine. And we are on the ground in Tel Aviv tonight with reaction to the president's address. But I want to begin with Sidney Powell's bombshell guilty plea in the Georgia election subversion case. Remind you, a few days before the trial was set to begin, Michael Moore and Elliot Williams are here with me now. I love it when lawyers are on the set. I tell you, it makes me feel all giddy inside, mostly because I have been, as you have been, following this case and wondering what would happen here. We are literally on the eve of this trial, a jury selection, talking about it. When you saw this guilty plea, one, were you surprised?
Well, I'm glad to be with you on set. I wasn't totally surprised. I mean, this is sort of standard prosecutor playbook: indict people and then try to get them to flip and become witnesses in your other cases. What was interesting here is the trial was expedited because she had filed a motion for a speedy trial, so everything was kind of moving at a quick pace.
That was her right to do so.
That was her right. There's a specific statute in Georgia that allows her to do that. She did it. She took advantage of it, and so now. Right here on the eve of trial, it feels like things are moving a little quicker. Some of that's because of that speedy trial motion. What's going to be interesting is what they're able to get out of her. Meaning, what will the prosecutor get? You know, she pled guilty to charges related to Coffee County, and that's dealing with getting some voting machines and paying some people to go down there. Not so much about Trump. And remember, this is a very detailed indictment, and it really doesn't have a big tie there. I think probably more interesting is what she may be offering in the federal case. Whether or not
for Jack Smith's case,
right.
not Fani Willis.
Whether or not there's some conditions in there, she's made some statements. We don't know yet, but she may have made some statements that will be useful in that prosecution.
When you look at it, I mean, the consequences here, and obviously plea offers, you know, they're not intended to be something that no defendant would ever want to take. There's got to be a little bit of give and take in order for it to make it work. When you look at this, though, and the end result, probation, not the full 7 charges, really the day practically before trial, Do you think that this is a signal that the prosecution's case was stronger or weaker than they thought?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I think they're confident that they're getting something out of her. Now, something we all know is that the overwhelming majority of criminal defendants plead guilty. In the federal system, it's upwards of 90%. I'm sure in the state of Georgia, it's roughly the same. Now,
which, by the way, is sometimes indicative of what we talked about in injustice in this country, that the cost-benefit analysis to plead as opposed to go through trial is more enticing.
it's literally sometimes called the trial penalty, in which people get higher sentences if they go to trial. So it's wholly unsurprising that she actually did plead guilty. Now, the sentence here, as I think we're all in agreement, is really not that much at all. I mean, I guess they are confident that they're getting something useful out of her, but like Michael had said, it's hard to know what exactly she's providing. Now, she was present for this sort of bonkers meeting on December 18th, 2020 in the Oval Office between, as people in the room called it, Team Crazy versus Team Normal.
Well, remind us again about that meeting, because people forget. I mean, there's been so much drinking out of the fire hose, they forget about that.
Team Crazy versus Team Normal. So there was, and again, this isn't my words. This is White House attorneys referring to a number of people around former President Trump, Team Crazy, making this argument to install Sidney Powell as a special investigator, a special prosecutor overseeing all matters of elections, that even people in the room thought was just made literally no sense. She can testify as to conversations in that room, things that were said to her, to the president, by the president, and anybody else in there that might be charged with crime. So that's one thing, but beyond that, it's hard to know what useful testimony you're going to get out of her.
I mean, you know the tendency. Whenever you have, obviously, Donald Trump is in a room litigiously, it takes a lot of the oxygen out. You think, forget the other 17 co-defendants. What about Trump? And it could be that she is useful with the other 17 co-defendants. Chesborough, maybe not, because he didn't want to even be tried with her. But is this significant for Donald Trump? Because this is now the second person to have pled guilty. Not in the case maybe out of D.C., as you mentioned, but is this significant to him?
It is. I mean, it's somebody that's described as his inner circle entering a guilty plea in charges that he's connected with. We just don't know the detail that she can give about his particular involvement, but she's just a piece of the puzzle. She's not necessarily the silver bullet in the case, I don't think, but I think she might give some context to sort of the involvement going on. I really thought the plea itself was a little bit anticlimactic. I mean, it's a misdemeanor. She's pleading to 6 separate misdemeanors, so it sounds like a 6-year sentence. It's not. It's 12-month sentences that happen to run after each other, and they're all probation. And if she finishes her sentence, she has no record. She can still vote. She can do all those things. So to have sort of put on the drama of bringing people in and parading them in to be processed and arrested and talk about the largest election case in history, it was a little bit anticlimactic. That tells me 2 things. Number one, it could be that she has good information. We don't know, and I don't know that the indictment lays out enough for us. But it also could mean that the state saw this as a way to sort of help dispose of an early case. They may not want to lay their entire trial out right now before the Trump trial is set. They may not want to do a preview, and that's what this was going to be, just a preview for the rest of those defendants to see the entire case and all the governance.
You make a strong point, because the calendar was not the friend of the prosecutors in this case. They have to be prepared to try the case when they have indicted, essentially. But the idea of the preview, remember, they made this argument that they had to try them all together because it would be repetitive, it would be an inefficient use of the resources of the court to just have subsequent successive trials over and over the same evidence. But what's interesting about the misdemeanor is she can still vote.
Absolutely.
She can still vote in Georgia. Part of this has to be a letter to the people of Georgia of an apology of some kind. I cannot wait to read that particular letter, I must say. But she can still vote.
She can still vote. Let's stay on that letter for a second, and along the lines of the clips that you played at the beginning, some of these quotes and really aggressive statements made by her. This is an individual who is as much a true believer in what we can call the big lie as anybody else. Now, in order...
Well, let's play them. I want to underline your point. It's a really good one. Let's just play some of what Elliot's talking about and just how significant it has been.
We are not going to be intimidated. We are not going to back down. We are going to clean this mess up now. President Trump won by a landslide. We are going to prove it. And we are going to reclaim the United States of America for the people who vote for freedom.
Now, she has to accept responsibility in order to plead guilty, and she needs to walk into a court and say, she sort of did today, but say, I engaged in acts of fraud, I acknowledge this conduct. That is vastly different than the words that you saw right there. And is she going to stick to the line where, you know, she's admitting to the conduct, or is she going to sort of waffle and wait? She issued a statement today saying, Patriots, look out for the news we're going to have tomorrow. So, you know, I'm not convinced that this individual doesn't go to trial and that this plea agreement doesn't fall apart in some way, but who knows?
We've seen plea agreements implode before, and maybe some people just like stepping on a rake. Who knows? Not me, everyone. Michael Moore, Elliot Williams, thank you so much. Next, we're on the ground in Tel Aviv with reaction to President Biden's Oval Office address tonight. He's reminding Americans who we are and what we stand for.
Let us not forget who we are. We reject all forms of hate, whether against Muslims, Jews, or anyone. That's what great nations do.
I was a teacher for 30 years, and today I'm a grandmother of 9. Technology is essential to our everyday lives, and that's why I'm concerned about our foreign adversaries' influence over the internet. Our adversaries believe in censorship and control. That's not the future I want for my grandchildren or yours. Congress needs to protect our democratic values and strengthen, not weaken, American technology.
Why not feed your dog like a family member? They truly are. With Ollie's freshly frozen, wholesome food. It has the nutrition your dog needs and the taste they actually want, saving me the hassle and the critique. Save on your first box at ollie.com.
This couple spent 10 more minutes in bed thanks to Roman. With Roman, you can take care of erectile dysfunction conveniently and discreetly. Because sometimes everything else can wait. Get started at ro.co/Roman.
Pop quiz. Did you know you can lose weight with a plan that fits your budget and your goals? Introducing Quick 9 from Nutrisystem. Lose up to 9 pounds your first 2 weeks. You get delicious frozen meals delivered right to your door with convenient shipments at an affordable price and fast weight loss.
I'm saving money and I'm losing weight.
It's flexible, it's affordable, and it works. Get off to a fast start with Quick 9. Call or go online right now to get over 50% off plus free extras.
Attention Medicare beneficiaries. If you have or are eligible for Medicaid, please listen closely. You may be eligible for a Medicare Advantage plan from WellCare with a 0 or low plan premium. Call now. We can answer your questions and help you enroll over the phone. WellCare provides access to essential benefits that go beyond original Medicare, such as dental, vision, hearing, and prescription drug coverage with free home delivery. Free over-the-counter healthcare items, free gym membership, and home-delivered meals. Plus, extra benefits like WellCare's telehealth services, including online doctor visits. WellCare's contracted with Medicare to provide plans that may be perfect for you. Call 1-877-297-3598. Now, that's 1-877-297-3598. WellCare.
The American Diabetes Association has been here for more than 80 years.
But we don't want to exist.
We don't want diabetes to overtake us.
To rob us.
To break us.
So we're standing tall, pushing for affordable care.
Lifting up people in need.
And seeking a cure through research.
So we can end diabetes for good.
Someday you won't need us.
Until then,
we fight.
Got the cabin for 3 days. It's gonna be sweet. What? I'm 12 hours short.
have a fun weekend.
Was that necessary?
No. Neither is a blown weekend. With Paycom, employees do their own payroll, so you can fix problems before they become problems. Get Paycom and make the unnecessary unnecessary. See you down the line.
Wake up fully recharged and ready to face the day with a smile. Get your Emma Hybrid Comfort and put sleep issues to bed. Free delivery, 365-night trial, and 10-year warranty. Awaken your best at emma-sleep.com.
To give your teeth a dentist clean feeling, start with a round brush head, add power, and you've got Oral-B. Round cleans better by surrounding each tooth to remove 100% more plaque for a superior clean. Oral-B, brush like a pro.
Well, tonight, a rare Oval Office address from President Joe Biden really laying out his case for why he thinks the United States public should support wartime aid to not only Ukraine, but also Israel. This as the world faces down a series of crises.
American leadership is what holds the world together. American alliances are what keep us, America, safe. American values are what make us a partner that other nations want to work with. To put all that at risk if we walk away from Ukraine, we turn our backs on Israel, it's just not worth it.
Joining me now from Tel Aviv, CNN anchor Caitlin Collins. Caitlin, so good to see you. I mean, Biden is making the case that it's not only about perhaps the humanity, but also about national security and that balance for the American public. What stuck out most to you?
Yeah, he said he didn't really blame people for asking why is the U.S. sending so much money to Ukraine or sending so much money to Israel, but he laid out why he believed that was important, that it's not just about those two respective nations, but how if those battles aren't fought there, if those fights aren't fought for what he says is, democracy versus autocracy, then those battles will happen in the United States or U.S. troops could be involved. And so he was kind of drawing this through line between these two separate wars, both war zones that he has now visited with his trip here to Tel Aviv just yesterday, and was making this argument and equating two very different entities, Hamas, of course, the terrorist group in Gaza, and President Vladimir Putin of Russia, saying that they both are fighting democracy, their neighbors who have these democracies. It was this through line of something that is two very different situations, but he tied them together as the reason he's asking Congress for this major ask in funding for both.
Meanwhile, he's tying these together, but you've got Congress that has their hands tied. They're not doing anything, obviously, because they don't have the Speaker of the House. And there's no actual end in sight for that yet. When you hear about President Biden making that pitch, asking for that aid, I mean, is it not only falling on deaf ears, but also hands that cannot do anything about it?
Yeah, it's going to a paralyzed Congress tomorrow when he sends this over. I mean, the Senate, it seems very clear that they would like to pass this. You've heard from some senators who disagree with funding for Ukraine, but overall, there is a pretty unanimous consensus in the Senate from both Democrats and Republicans. In the House, there's not even consensus within the Republican conference. They can't decide who they want to elect them. They're debating whether or not they should empower the guy who is temporarily in the position, really just as a caretaker, to do the job through January, because Jim Jordan cannot get the votes. And so it really does strike you when you listen to President Biden's speech tonight, this rare Oval Office address, only the second time he's addressed the country from there. And then you think about down Pennsylvania Avenue at Capitol Hill. I mean, Republicans are behind closed doors, essentially yelling expletives at one another, blocking each other on Twitter, fighting, and cannot elect a House Speaker. So President Biden says ultimately he does believe that will get resolved. This aid will get passed, but it is quite a notable roadblock.
Caitlin Collins, thank you so much. Look, as President Biden is calling for more American aid for Ukraine and also Israel, I want to take a look at just what the U.S. has provided so far. I got CNN's Tom Foreman. He's at the Magic Wall to break it all down for us tonight. So, Tom, what can you tell us?
Well, since Russia invaded Ukraine in early 2022, the U.S. has sent tanks and missiles and artillery and helicopters, drones, missile defense systems, troop transports, radar, loads of infantry weapons and equipment, and so on. In all, more than $75 billion worth of aid has gone to Ukraine from the U.S. And military spending, this part right here, accounts for well over half of that total. That is much, much more than the U.S. sends to any other country, and it absolutely dwarfs American contributions to Israel, which in 2021 was in the typical range of $3 to $4 billion, Laura.
Wow, just seeing the numbers laid out, it's really stunning to think about, and that's quite a difference. I mean, we have recent CNN polling, I think, on what Americans actually think about what you just described. Let's start with Israel. What do those polls say?
Yeah, if you look at these, American sympathy for Israel is on a real upswing right now, so you might expect strong support for that relatively modest amount of U.S. aid to Israel. But the numbers paint a murkier picture. 35% of Americans say the current level of aid is about right. 15% say it's too much. 14% say it's too little. And 36%, the largest single group here, say they're unsure. And an interesting side note in this, the numbers show that Republicans and those who watch the news closely are more favorable to this current level of aid, Laura.
So what about Ukraine funding? Is there polling about that?
Yeah, we have one from back in August, and in that case, it shows a dramatic drop since the early days of the war, when a large majority of Americans favored help to Ukraine. Whether it's because of the length of the conflict or the raw amount of money that's sent that way, 55% of Americans, this number right down here, they are currently saying there should be no additional funding for Ukraine, and 45% say the money should keep flowing. And here, Republicans are saying that's enough spending for Ukraine. They strongly oppose more spending, and Democrats solidly favor more money for the fight against the Russians. So all of these numbers, put all this together, put together the turmoil up on Capitol Hill. That's what President Biden is up against when he made that speech tonight, and what he'll be up against in coming days.
Tom Foreman, thank you for breaking it all down. It was really helpful to see the numbers right there. I appreciate it. Well, President Biden is making a direct plea tonight to the American people, and he is calling aid for Israel and Ukraine. He's calling it an investment. But did he make his case? I'll ask the experts. And later, I'll talk with the uncle of Natalie Holloway just days after her killer confessed.
Dozens of rockets coming in here. Those interceptions right above us.
We have been hearing repeated exchanges of gunfire.
You can see the scale of the destruction.
If you know anything about what they do to people in Gaza, that is worse than death.
My children and grandchildren experienced a living hell. How difficult is this fight going to be on the ground? We have no other place to go.
Breaking news coverage continues live from Israel.
You should Angie that.
Angie what?
Angie that. It means comparing custom quotes from skilled service professionals. Or book.
And you look at it, and there is the request to be invested in two long-term scenarios: Ukraine, Israel. Did you make the case?
I think he did. Now, of course, it depends on one's predilections and one's views of how this is supposed to work. But President Biden harkens back to basically the time of FDR, where he looks at a world in which there's good and there's evil, and he sees the democracies as being on the good side, autocracies being on the side of evil, and he believes that the panoply that we're dealing with, the areas that we're dealing with, are really a contrast between an autocracy on the one side, like Russia, which invades Ukraine, and Hamas, which in essence invaded, to an extent, Israel. And so he's seeing that, and he's saying these forces are on the march, and now that these forces are moving forward, we need to confront them. We need to stop them from going ahead and changing our way of life.
I mean, Biden did speak today about the possibility of this spreading. Listen.
The risk of conflict and chaos could spread in other parts of the world, in the Indo-Pacific, in the Middle East, especially in the Middle East. Iran is supporting Russia's in Ukraine, and is supporting Hamas and other terrorist groups in the region, and will continue to hold them accountable, I might add.
You've said before, Robin, that you think this is really us being on the precipice of something. Do you think so?
Yes, in the last 48 hours, we've seen attacks on U.S. positions in Syria, places where U.S. troops are based in Iraq. The Houthis of Yemen are believed to have fired missiles and drones at Israel, and the United States shot them down. We've seen on the Lebanese border firefights from both Hezbollah and the Palestinian hardline factions along that border. There's a real danger that these are all parties that have been on the sidelines of this war until now. Neither or none of them, I think, wants necessarily to fight a larger war. But the question is there such momentum? Is there such passion and fury now that it's possible to draw them back? And once the United States deploys in the region, not only do we show our muscle, but we also become targets. And the question is, if we fire the first shot, as we did against these drones and missiles from Yemen, does that make us a party to a conflict?
You know, we're in the last 2 days just thinking it's frankly very scary what you described, because it has such a level of imminent, like feeling and foreboding and thinking about what could be next. Just a few days ago, we were wondering when there'd be a green-lit ground incursion or ground invasion. We're not there anymore, or are we?
Well, it could happen, but there's some things, there's some mitigating circumstances right now, I think, in terms of whether or not the Israelis, in a tactical sense, are going to move forward into Gaza. The problem that they have is, on the one hand, they've got all these forces deployed, 300,000 reservists that they call them, 360,000 actually, and they are poised to move forward both against Gaza and potentially southern Lebanon as well, against Hezbollah. But the other part of the problem is humanitarian. There are those corridors that they say they're establishing at the southern border with Gaza and Egypt, and if that is opened, then of course they can't have conflict in that particular area of Gaza, at least, and Gaza's a very small place, until that issue is resolved one way or the other. So there's a potential that the invasion or incursion has been delayed a bit, but there's also a potential that it could move forward. We're kind of at that teetering edge right now at this point.
You said earlier, just that point as well, Robin, I mean, the Pentagon actually was confirming today that the USS Carney shot down 3 land attack missiles and several drones launched by Iran-backed Houthi forces in Yemen. It's not clear precisely where they were aimed, but they were headed north towards Israel, obviously. And I wonder, you mentioned the notion of U.S. intervention. Are we being lured in? Is this something that you anticipated?
Well, the United States has always taken a strong position on the side of Israel, and it will do what it can to help defend it in terms of supplying it. It doesn't want to engage in Israel's war. This is something that is an Israeli war. I think the danger is that all of the forces, or many of the forces, the militias across the region, most of them allied with Iran, now have missiles, drones, and rockets all capable of hitting Israel. And they have what's known as overmatch, that Israel can't defend against all of them all at the same time if they all unleashed what they have. And so
it would require a lot of coordination, though.
It requires coordination, but Israel doesn't know when these might attack, where it needs to deploy, what it needs to defend against. So, this again there is more firepower, more passion, better trained militias with more funding than at any time in the modern Middle East conflict dating back to 1948.
What was interesting about this, and that's absolutely correct what Robin is saying, the other part of this, though, is notice where the U.S. forces are deployed. You've got the USS Carney in the Red Sea, just south of the Suez Canal, and it was in a position where it could actually intercept those missiles and those drones. We have forces in Iraq and Syria, basically along Iran's periphery, at least the western periphery, and so there's a message also to the Iranians. We are here, they are sending stuff against us, but we are in these areas so that we can also do things against them, should we choose to do so.
Will it be enough? That's the question that will loom for everyone to try to answer. Not tonight. Thank you so much, both of you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Natalie Holloway's killer, confessing almost 20 years after her disappearance. I'm going to talk with the family's private investigator and a reporter who's been covering that story since the very beginning.
Hi.
Struggle with occasional nerve aches in your hands or feet? Try Nervive Nerve Relief from the world's #1 nerve care company. Nervive contains ALA to relieve nerve aches and B complex vitamins to fortify healthy nerves.
How's your phone? Is it more charged now?
Why not feed your dog like the family member?
How's your phone? Is it more charged now? Well, let's see. Yeah, if you wanted to stop by here to give me the bow and light and flashlight, you could do that.
Okay, but do you have time to talk or not?
I could talk a little bit. I'm in a healing mode, suffering and in pain.
Okay, well, I wanted to. I literally was just about to show one more person the invention,
Oh, yeah.
and then I was
Go ahead.
and he's with me. He's with me.
Oh,
So do you
great.
want to just meet up tomorrow and just enjoy your night? It'll be better for probably both of us. And I'm here all day tomorrow. I got nothing
Okay.
planned all day and all night tomorrow. I'm at the I'm free.
All right.
So
All right.
I'd rather come over tomorrow and just chill a little bit in the afternoon or morning once I'm up around noon or so, and then I'll for sure see you tomorrow. Even if you're not feeling well, I'll just drop it off for you. We can talk another time, but we'll try to talk and
Okay.
drop it off tomorrow. How's that sound?
Yeah, sure. And if I am feeling well enough, I may try to work at U-Haul again. And I'd be there as well.
Okay, well, yeah, well, if we run into each other, we'll run into each other. Can I take you out for lunch, for dinner after work? If you end up working, can I take you out for dinner?
Well, with having diverticulitis right now, I'm not in the ordinary mood. Food is really different for me now.
Oh, okay, no worries, brother. Well, I understand, and I want to just be with you, sit with you, and hang with you for just a bit. So let's chat tomorrow, and we'll figure it out, okay? In the afternoon and the early evening's best for me, okay?
Okay.
Okay, I love you, brother. Take care, okay?
Okay, Jalo.
Okay, bye.
After 18 years, the man long suspected of killing Alabama teen Natalie Holloway has confessed.
I decided to take her and to put her into the ocean. So I grab her and I half pool and half walk with her into the ocean. I push her off. I walk up to about my knees into the ocean, and I push her off into the sea.
Joran Vandersloot admitting that he killed the 18-year-old in Aruba with a cinder block after she kneed him in the crotch when he tried to make unwanted sexual advances. The confession came as part of a plea deal stemming from charges in which he tried to extort money from Holloway's own mother in exchange for information about her remains. Joining me now, Inside Edition Chief Correspondent Jim Murray. He has covered this story from the beginning and spent time with Natalie's mother. Also here is TJ Ward, the private investigator who worked on this case for the Holloway family. I'm glad that you're both here. This has been a case that has captivated the nation for literally decades as to what happened to this young woman. Jim, were you surprised that he confessed And now?
I think I was relieved he confessed. You know, I know that Beth and likely Matt, her son, her ex-husband, Natalie's dad, Dave, and her half-sister, none of them believe the apology that Yoran gave, but they all believe the confession. And really, that's all that matters. Prosecutors believe it. He was given a polygraph, Yoran, and whether you could say he tricked it or not, prosecutors were happy with that. But they have been looking, the family's been looking for a definitive answer, a declaration of guilt, a declaration that Yoran was indeed the killer, not the suspect. And so the fact that the family now has peace, I think, is the relevant point. He's not going to serve any additional time. He's going to serve 20 years, which is concurrent with what he's serving in Peru anyway. But at least it closes that part of the investigation and this horrible journey for the family.
And in Peru, another separate killing as well as what he is serving for. TJ, does what he's saying, I understand Jim's point, and this is a family that has been seeking the truth, wants closure, it deserves it as well. Does what he says happen line up with what you had found during your own investigation in Aruba?
Well, good evening. Thanks for having me. One of the problems I have is with his end result that he put her into the water, into the ocean. I don't believe that was the end result. Back when Beth and I were both on the island and I was conducting the investigation, I learned, and Beth had also learned, that there was a boat brought in, and I believe that Paulus Vandersloot made that a decision to bring a boat in and told Yoran to get out of there.
That's the father?
I believe he was put in a boat. Yes, Paulus Vandersloot, Yoran's father. I believe that Yoran, after this happened, called his father and told him what happened, and I think his father told him to leave and just secure her body. And I believe, and also Beth had heard at the same time that Paulus may have brought a boat in and they removed her body. There's no way that he could have pushed her in the ocean because she would have washed back up. And they probably put her in a boat and took her out if in fact that she was in the water and his truth about her being in the ocean is a fact.
Jim, you're nodding, and of course the father has not been charged in connection with this in the guilty plea, but you're nodding. It seems that you agree.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense when you talk about Yoran's his statement that he walked in halfway up to his knees and then dumped her and pushed her out. It's not likely that she would have in fact washed away. What's I think important is his acknowledgement that he says, I did this. And he did bring out some facts that we frankly didn't know. We now know, and I think that Beth takes solace in this, that her daughter fought back. She didn't like this man's advances. She fought back, and then she unfortunately paid with her life. But at least we have some more information. And it's just a page and a half, this transcript of his confession, and it's just so haunting. You played a portion. It's very disturbing, but frankly, at least it gives some closure. And Beth has said very publicly, we can now say he's the killer. He's no longer the suspect, and that gives her some peace.
It's an extraordinary point. Just thinking about what Natalie endured, and that this confession was the result of her fighting back and trying to prevent his unwanted advances, and this the result. TJ, was there ever a time though that you thought that not that he didn't act alone, but that he was not the killer?
Oh, I knew all along he was involved at some point. And one thing that really bothers me after I got onto the island is that the lead investigator, Vanderstraten, something wasn't right about him. So I started looking into him, and I learned that Vanderstraten was Vandersloot's godfather, his dad's best friend, and worked in the Ministry of Justice with Paulus Vandersloot from 95 to 98. So that was a little disturbing to know that this investigation was not prompt and doing wholeheartedly.
It's unbelievable to think about that almost 20 years has transpired, and now this has happened, that family having closure. We're actually going to speak to a member of Natalie's family next. Thank you both for joining us. This is an unbelievable story, and closure for the family is what is deserved. Thank you both.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, Natalie Holloway's uncle, in his first interview since Joran Vandersloot confessed to killing his niece Natalie.
Missing punches. Unnecessary. Check reversals. Unnecessary. Timesheet correction. Unnecessary. Unentered sick time. Unnecessary. Go! Go! Unnecessary. When you can take this phone, you'll be ready. Make the unnecessary unnecessary. Let your employees do their own payroll.
To finally lose 80 pounds and keep it off with Golo is amazing.
I've been maintaining, the weight is gone, and it's never coming back.
With Golo, I've not only kept off the weight,
Oh.
I'm happier, I'm healthier, and I have a new lease on life.
Golo is the only thing that will let you lose weight and keep it
Oh.
off.
He loses 100.
President Joe Biden made an excellent speech, and I support funding Ukraine and Israel with what's happening. A song I follow back on Paul Rainbow's song, also the new and first leader of humankind in the free world, created October 19th, 2023. Excellent speech, President Joe Biden. Excellent speech, President Joe Biden. Well, several CNN personalities have had panels going over his speech from the Oval Office. Well, there may be a few obstacles right now, but they'll be mended. Yeah, no Speaker of the House. There may be a few obstacles right now, but they'll be mended. I think he'll get everything he's asked for, yeah. Well, he should, because he painted a very good picture of America and what it stands for and what can happen if you don't do it. What can happen if Ukraine becomes part of Russia again and all the freedom that they had and their sovereign nation is lost and all their freedom, all their creativity, all their unity becoming just a plebiscite of Putin. And what of Israel? What if all the Arab nations gang up on her, on it, and tear it apart? Oh, well, hey, do you want to see that happen? Not in your life.